Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am going to just switch my screen real fast. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for joining us. My name is Mara Walsh and I'm your host today. I know we are all very excited to go to the south of Italy this evening, this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are. I know it's a different time of day. We have a really large group online today. We have a great group in Zoom, and we also have a nice group following us on the Facebook Live. So I'm happy to see you all. First, a few housekeeping items that I'd like to take care of. Just in case, if you have audio troubles and if you need to turn your audio up, you can do this in one of three ways. One, you could attach a headset or earbuds. This is the best way to hear on any device. If you are on a phone, or an iPad, you may have to switch it up a little bit on how you hear. If you're on a computer, you can turn up the computer audio as well. You can go to the little arrow next to your mute or microphone icon on the Zoom menu and go to the audio settings and turn it up from the audio output volume for your speaker. In terms of your screen, to enlarge the presentation screen, you can do that by moving the vertical bar that's in between my video and the screen closer to my video so that the presentation is larger than my image. If you're on a phone or an iPad, you may have to swipe one way or the other to get it off of my image and to go to the presentation. Okay. So now that we are optimized for the best technological viewing, I'm going to move forward into the presentation. I'll share a little bit about myself so that you know where I'm coming from. So again, my name is Mara Walsh. I'm in the United States and specifically between Philadelphia and New York. I started leading tours for EF Girl Scouts several years ago, and now I have expanded my physical travel program into adult tours as well as family tours, and I continue to do Girl Scout tours each summer every year. These are family-friendly tours, and in most cases I partner with EF Tours or their adult division Go Ahead Tours. There are a couple reasons I started this virtual tour series. One, I really wanted to support the tour director community during this time of no work, since we're not able to travel and obviously they're not able to work. I really wanted to keep the excitement of travel alive for my travel group and extend that opportunity to those who've learned about us through their friends, their family, social media, and other means. So we've done several tours in the past weeks. If you missed them, all of them are recorded and available on my website, girltraveltours.com/virtual-tours. I believe the name of the website is on the slide that you're looking at right now. And there's many menus, and it's the virtual tour drop-down menu. You can see all the virtual tours. We have several more in the weeks to come. New Zealand, we have an African safari, Germany, Transylvania, right around Halloween time. I'm excited about adding that one to the list. Japan, the Highlands of Scotland, Alaska, and we're going to do a Vienna tour around Christmas when the Christmas markets are open there. We'll have more to follow after that as well. As long as you're interested in viewing these tours, we will continue to produce them and put them out there. You can register for future tours and view all recordings of past tours on my website. Again, it's listed on the slide, but it's girltraveltours.com. But today we're off on a virtual tour from Pompeii to the Amalfi Coast. Before we get started on this, I want to share with you a few ways for you to interact with us during the event. One, feel free to ask questions about the tour director, or my travel program by using the Q&A link. Anything that you write in the Q&A will go to Elena after the event, and we will be reading them off and answering those questions. So if you need to chat me personally and you have a question that you want, or a word of advice or something that you want to provide in feedback, do that through the chat mechanism, please. And I've also included an interactive poll just to get people's understanding of the familiarity they have with this region. So I'm going to launch the poll now. Feel free to give us your feedback. What's your connection to the south of Italy and the Amalfi Coast? You know, I've been and love it. Probably we're going to have half of the audience or more in that category. And then I plan to go in the future. So I'm going to end the poll as quickly as I got into it. We have about, I'm going to show the results. We have about 34% who have been and loved it. We have about 50% almost who plan to go in the future. I know I'm in that realm as well. So so that's great. I'm going to take the poll off. And one thing about this is that regardless of how much we know about southern Italy right now, we hope to enhance that today on this virtual tour. And as we all know, a tour wouldn't be complete without a fantastic tour director. A tour director is like a personal concierge. He or she stays with your group from start to finish and shares a world of knowledge and manages all your travel plans. So this should lead to a stress-less and full of positive experience trip for you. These are by far the most important people in the group. And if we're not traveling, obviously these tour directors have no work. So I will be sharing in the chat as we get started with the tour and as we get into it, ways that we can tip the tour director. If you're so inclined. If you're enjoying this tour, you can follow my lead by tipping the tour director, and I'll be collecting that. And all of the tips go to the tour director that are collected, and they go on after the event. I'm hoping that this virtual tour will not only reignite your desire to travel, but also allow a tour director to do what she does best and share her knowledge and passion for her country and travel. But before I hand over the event to our tour director, I know many of you found my virtual events through Facebook, and some of you are on Facebook right now viewing this streamed event. I just want to warn everybody out there that there are several relentlessly unscrupulous people on Facebook trying to promote fake events by copying legitimate people's events like this one and providing alternative links to sites where you need to provide a credit card to enter. Please, please, please never give your credit card to enter a free event. My virtual tour presentations do not require credit cards to join, and you can always safely access our events through my website or by viewing my Facebook page, but never, never click on the supposed links to the streaming of the events in the comments, okay? So back to our virtual tour, let's get it going. Today you can expect an amazingly educational and fun virtual road trip from Pompeii to the Amalfi Coast. And you're lucky today to have my most favorite tour director here again, who just happens to be an Italian tour guide and is ready to share her expertise and love for her country. I am honored to introduce you to and hand over this event to our amazing tour director, Elena Salerno. Elena, come on and join me.
Go. Hi, thank you, Mara. Hello, everyone. I'm going to go with hello and no good mornings, good evenings, because I see you guys come from all over the world, and this is a big emotion for me. We have 5,000 people or 6,000 people if we count the Facebook Live. I'm going to share my screen in a second. And while I do this, I just wanted to share with you that recently someone reminded me that on the very first event that I led together with Mara in June, I started by saying, it goes without saying that my voice will falter. I am in front of 138 people. This makes me laugh a lot now that we are up to 6,000. I could never have imagined having such an audience. So thank you all for participating. Let me start sharing my screen because we have a lot to cover tonight, and I know you're all excited to come with me to the Amalfi Coast. Go. You should be able to see what I'm seeing. So let's start. For the one that followed the presentations I already did together with Mara, you might remember that I'd like to give titles to my events. So the title I decided to give to this one is, of course, since 2020 has given us, let's make limoncello. Let's start. So a brief outline, as always, in the hope that it will make it easier for you to follow the whole presentation throughout. Our road trip tonight will have the following stops. We're going to start in the area of Mount Vesuvius, and of course visit the site of the city of Pompeii. And then we will stop in the city of Sorrento, sail off to the island of Capri, and finally drive along the Amalfi coast, visiting 3 towns along the way. We're going to stop in Positano, next will be Amalfi, and finally Ravello. So let's start. Oh, let's not forget, this should be a road trip. I found this image and I find it lovely. Of course, we couldn't fit all 1,000 of us in this tiny, tiny Fiat 500, but had we been 3 or 4, as I usually do with my private customers when they come to Italy, this would be my vehicle of choice. So just to give you an idea of what it might be like had we been there. I always like to start with giving you an idea of where the place that we focus on is within the map of the world. And I use latitude as a point of reference. So the area that we cover tonight is passed through by the 40th parallel north, the line that I marked in yellow in the map. And to give you a reference, along the same parallel, moving westward, you would find Philly on the east coast of the US, and Shelter Cove. It passes through Shelter Cove in the north part of California, north of San Francisco on the west coast. Within the Italian peninsula, that we cover is placed within the region that I highlighted in the darker green, which is this one, and the name of the region is Campania. Some of you might not know that Italy, administratively speaking, is divided into regions, which is more or less what happens in Australia, with the difference that we are not a federation. So these regions, they do have some autonomy in some matters, but we are not, legally speaking, a federation. And within the region of Campania, we are going to concentrate our attention in this area that I marked in black. So zooming in a little bit, we're going to start from Mount Vesuvius. A very short way away is the site of Pompeii, Sorrento right on the coast, and that island, that little island over there is Capri. All of these places overlook this gulf, this vast gulf that is the Gulf of Naples, which takes its name on from the biggest city that overlooks it. The actual Amalfi coast doesn't overlook the same gulf. It is right there. It is the southern portion of this peninsula, and it overlooks the Gulf of Salerno, like my family name. It's the other big city that we find driving along the coast towards the south. Our first protagonist tonight, Mount Vesuvius, or simply the mountain, people from Naples call him. He has had in its history some very spectacular, albeit devastating explosions, eruptions. Going backwards in time, there was one in, this is the view, sorry, I forgot that I put this in. This is a picture that I took actually. Mount Vesuvius can be climbed. It is a very, very easy hike. If I did it, anyone can do it. And this is the view from the top. So from the Vesuvius, if you look down towards the sea, you can see the whole Gulf of Naples that we were looking at on the map before. And to show you where the places that we've mentioned are, the city, the big city lying to the right is Naples. The island right in front of us is Capri, if you get in the easy distance. And on the other side of the Gulf of Naples, you've got the city of Sorrento. Now, as I was saying, Vesuvius is famous for some very spectacular eruption throughout history. The very last one was in 1944. And at that time, we are during World War II. Naples has just been liberated by the Allies, by the Allied armies. And so we had a presence of US soldiers together with British ones within the city limits. And we see them here looking at, maybe a bit scared, at the color smoke that rises from the mountain. And also in the aftermath, the soldiers had to do some cleaning up. This is a soldier cleaning the wings of his aircraft from all the ash and the pumice stone that that erupted from the volcano and were deposited on the land. Going backwards in time from 1944, which, by the way, this 1944 one was the very last eruption that we had, so it's 76 years ago. It's been a while. Going backwards, another very big one happened in 1872, of which this is kind of a rare photograph. And going further backwards in time, we have the year 79 AD, which is the year that interests us tonight, because it is the year when the city of Pompeii, the ancient Roman city of Pompeii, was wiped out off the face of the earth by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. We have, of this very ancient occurrence, we have a first-hand witness. This guy, called Pliny the Younger, to differentiate him from his uncle Pliny the Elder. They were both literary men in ancient Rome. They were writers and poets. Pliny the Younger was there. He wasn't in Pompeii, otherwise he would have died, but he was vacationing along the Gulf of Naples in a place right in front of Pompeii and Mount Vesuvius, in a villa that his family owned. So he recorded everything that he saw on that day, hour by hour, and then he wrote it down in several letters to a friend. So we have these letters, and we have read the accounts that he gave us of what exactly happened on that day in 79 AD. And let me tell you, he was so precise and accurate in the way he described the eruption and all the movements of the mountain. Nowadays, volcanologists named that type of eruption by his name. So they are called Plinian eruptions nowadays, because again, he was such a good eyewitness to what happened. So from the words of Pliny the Younger, we see this is just a little drawing that shows us his point of view, his privileged point of view across the Gulf of Naples from the mountains, so he could see it all without being in danger himself. And from the words of Pliny the Younger, this is what he writes. By now, ash was falling on the ships, thicker and hotter the closer they got. And one could already see pumice stones and pebbles that had been broken by the fire. And then he goes on. Sorry, I have my computer. It was now day everywhere else, but over there dwelled a darkness deeper and thicker than any night. And then finally, it was light again, not till the third day after this melancholy accident. So it was just to, enter a little bit the atmosphere that must have been during that day in 79 AD. If we enter the archaeological site that we can now visit of what was the ancient city of Pompeii, we can tell how close it is to Mount Vesuvius. The ancient city of Pompeii lies just 6 miles southeast of the volcano. So it is really, really close. See the volcano from everywhere you're standing within the archaeological site. Right now in this image, we are at the center of the forum of the city. Every Roman city had its own forum. The forum is just the main square around which lots of established built government buildings, temples. So it was also a religious center. It was a marketplace. It was a social place where people just met with each other. So a very vast square, as you can see in the image, with this colonnade right sides. The columns originally were holding up a covered walkway, so an arcade, if you will, that was there to shelter people during for the heat of the day during summer, or from rain if it was winter time, autumn or winter time. Another monument, we are looking at public monuments that were in the city of Pompeii. Another one that we're left with almost intact is the amphitheater. Now, the amphitheater, for anyone who's been in Rome and has visited the Colosseum, you will recognize the shape. Amphitheater is the generic term for this type of architecture. So it was a place that the Romans devised, the type of venue that they used for specific spectacles, exactly as it happened in the Colosseum in Rome. The Colosseum is just the most famous one, but it's not the oldest one. The Pompeii amphitheater was built way before, 150 years or so before the Colosseum in Rome. So this one is more ancient. And the types of spectacles that were held here were things such as gladiatorial fights, for instance, or animal hunts, exotic animal hunts. So this was not a theater. We are left also with the theater in Pompeii. And in theaters such as this one, what happened were they held comedies and dramas. So exactly what we mean when we say theater, when we use the word theater nowadays. Other than public monumental buildings, we are left with lots of shops that once were in the city of Pompeii, this being a bakery or what remains of a bakery. The bakeries in Pompeii were a lot. 34 were found by archaeologists. They were called pistrina in Latin. So pistrina is the plural name for bakeries. And these objects that you see in the foreground, they were grinds. So they used them, it had a rotating mechanism. If you see the holes in the side, they put poles in the holes, and then they used animals such as mules or horses to turn this grind around. And between the two stone pieces were the cereals, the grains that got ground and turned into flour. And then the brick structure that you see to the left was the oven where the bread would be cooked. Archaeologists have found something that blows my mind every time. Archaeologists have found a loaf of bread intact in its shape, in the way we see it, even though it has been turned to rock. And we can see how, and this was typical at the time, not just in Pompeii, but in the whole Roman world, the fact that they pre-sliced it, they pre-cut it into 8 slices. And this is because the people didn't use cutlery at the time. They didn't have knives and forks. So to make it easier for the ones gathered around the table having a meal together, to pull apart the bread. And we do pull apart bread nowadays, so it might be, it might have originated from this. I also see the forebearer maybe of pizza in this. I'm a big fan of pizza, so I like to look at these slices and think that maybe pizza came from this idea, maybe. Another type of establishment open to the public that archaeologists found in plenty in Pompeii were thermopolia. This is the Latin word. They were literally diners. So what happened? People, the working class, so not talking about the wealthy, but the working, either they didn't have a kitchen at home, or they didn't have the time and the money to go back home for lunch at midday. So they just stayed out the whole day, and they needed places that could provide cooked food, warm cooked food to eat as lunch. So thermopolia always had a counter. We are looking at the counter of this place that overlooked the street. And within the counter are set these containers. In Latin, they call them dolia. They are just jars, big terracotta jars that are placed within the that could hold the prepared food to keep it warm. It would then be ladled out in portions for whoever asked and ordered. And then you see the shelves right behind the counter. They were there to put on either the beverages that would be on offer. So fresh beverages, warm wine was apparently sold a lot at Pompeii, or even just the cups and the glasses that they would use to serve the drinks to the public. A lot of thermopolia were found, even more than bakeries. 100 or so in Pompeii were found. So these were very, very popular places. Another type of establishment yet the brothels. The brothels were everywhere in Pompeii. They found 25. And let me tell you right away that the city of Pompeii was a large city. Okay, maybe not by our standards nowadays that we have metropolises, but it was a large city. Now the city has been excavated yet. There are still 2 or 3 neighborhoods, let's call them, that haven't been excavated. So for now, they have found 25 brothels, which they called lupanares, by the way, in Latin. Lupa was the term in Latin for prostitute. Let me tell you, 25 brothels in a city that counted more or less 20,000 people, inhabitants. If you look at the ratio, that's a lot. Everybody went to the brothel, and I mean men, of course. Brothels were establishments that had plenty of small little bedrooms. In the bedroom, just a bed, probably not too comfy. As you can see, it's made of stone, no door, and just a curtain to give you privacy, to close it off to the eyes of the other customers. And then these establishments had decorations themselves on the walls. You had these little paintings. These were the illustration of all the services that a customer could ask for or pay for within the establishment. And then if you visit Pompeii in the future, or if you've ever been to Pompeii, you might remember it is filled with these shapes. Phalluses are everywhere in Pompeii. And even out of the archaeological site, the stalls selling souvenirs, they sell everything shaped like a phallus. For 2 reasons. They were used for 2 reasons. The phallus was a symbol of vigor and the energy of life. So it was a positive symbol, and it was considered a luck charm. So to sculpt it or paint it on your wall, many have been found within the walls of private homes. It meant that you were bringing luck to your family and to your household. In the specific case of the image I am showing you, this is sculpted on the page. It was used as a pointing sign to show people where the direction of the brothel, of the nearest brothel was. So if you go to Pompeii, again, you will see them everywhere. The streets in Pompeii, and this is something that, I don't know, I like it a lot. The fact that the streets have come to such pristine conditions. Look at them. I live in Rome, and let me tell you, the streets nowadays are not paved as well as this one. They get potholes 3 days after being paved. This street is 2,000 and more years old, still perfect. We can notice they had sidewalks, paved, raised sidewalks, so that people could walk and not be in constant danger walking through traffic. And they also had, in some spots, these raised stones that you see in the middle of the street now. What were they? But crosswalks, of course. They had invented a way for pedestrians to move from one sidewalk to the opposite one without having to step down into the dirt, into the mud of the streets where all the carts and all the animals passed. And maybe you see in between these raised stones, there are marks in the street level. Those were either left by so many carts for so many centuries passing in exactly that point, or they were done on purpose by the city when they were paving the streets to, you know, as guidelines to convey traffic to the carts hitting the raised stones of the crosswalk. Archaeologists have found one vehicle from ancient times, this cart. Of course, they have found only the metal parts, the iron parts, and the carpentry has been reconstructed faithfully to the original. So this is exactly what it looked like. And you see how the wheels are very tall. So they were designed in a way that they could roll over the sidewalks, the raised stones of the sidewalks without having any trouble. This cart specifically was found in this home, and so we start talking about the private homes, several types of homes. We're going to look at the ones where wealthy families dwelled. So the middle and poorest classes homes, we're not going to look at those. They were way simpler than these. but houses of the wealthy have left us many clues of how life in Pompeii must have been like. They all, or almost all of them, developed around an open courtyard like this one that had a colonnade around it, a little bit like the Forum, remember the public square? And then they have also insides. This one is the House of Menandro, by the way. Each house has been named by archaeologists. Inside is also spectacular. Pompeii houses, the rich people's homes, they were all overly maybe decorated for our taste, with walls all painted very colorful with all these frescoes on the walls. Another home, the Vetti house. Now the Vetti was the family name of the two brothers living in this home. Very spectacular mention. Look at the details of this art on the walls. The interesting thing is that the Vetti brothers, they had been slaves, and then they became liberti, which meant that they had been liberated by their owner. They became really rich merchants, which the house is a testimony to how wealthy they were. But archaeologists also found flyers, posters in this home that tells us the two brothers even went into politics, into city politics. So they raised really high in the social ladder. This is something that could happen in Roman society. It didn't matter how you were born, where you were born from. It mattered only if you were, willing to work enough and to give your best. Possibly the most famous house in Pompeii is the Villa of the Mysteries. Now, a villa is yet another type of home. This was not a place where people lived their whole life. A villa was a vacationing home. So a wealthy family built a huge mansion, not in the city where they lived, outside in the countryside. In fact, this one is not within the walls of the ancient city. It's just outside in what was one of the suburbs of Pompeii. The villa, so it was a big estate that was not just the house, but also farming land. So it was also a productive unit for agricultural works and products. The Villa of the Mysteries takes on its name from this painting, the wall painting of the dining room of the villa that shows us different rites and rituals from the cult of Dionysus. The cult of god Dionysus, or Bacchus, is considered by historians a mystery or mystic cult. So that's why the villa is called the Villa of the Mysteries. There are also some things found in Pompeii that make me think that things never change, and even the world and how we behave hasn't changed in past 2 millennia. These were graffiti on some walls, found on some walls. So the vandalization of walls in public spaces happened even 2,000 years ago, with the main difference, in my opinion, maybe that they weren't painted but carved in the wall. And if you visit any ancient site, even the Colosseum in Rome, you will find graffiti from all times. You have graffiti from the 1800s, graffiti from the times, and this is a testimony to the fact that they happened also in ancient Roman times. And then also something that we can easily connect to, the doormats, or what I called the doormats. These were not made out of fabric. Used to, of course, these are stone mosaics laid in the floor. So to welcome their visitors, homeowners designed their own way, their own doormat. Have the writing, the word that you see in this mosaic is a hello in Latin. So a hello or a welcome. This is another simpler hello. And this is probably the most famous one of all. The writing, it's not very clear, but it says cave canem, which means beware of the dog, which is something that we can still see, a sign, beware of the dog in our neighbor's lawn, maybe. So again, something that we can relate to. Now, Pompeii is the gift that never stops giving. This is something that was very, very recently discovered by archaeologists. As I told you, not all the ancient city has been brought to light. There are still lots of parts of Pompeii that have to be excavated, and they will be in the future, but it costs a lot of money to do these excavations. Recently, there was this great Pompeii project that was funded by the European Union and the Italian government, and they were able to start excavating one more neighborhood. And something they found in one of the homes. The archaeologists have named it, for now at least, the treasure of the witch. So what was this? These were objects all found collected in the same place. They were found in the cast, in this spot that was left by a wooden box. The wood, of course, is gone. It has deteriorated, but the objects are all made out of semi-precious stones or shells. So they sustained time, and they got to us intact. The room that they were found in was a service room within that house. It wasn't in the main master bedroom. So archaeologists deducted that these objects weren't owned by the matron, the lady of the house, but they were probably owned by one of the servants, by one of the slaves that lived together with the family in the home. And they called it the treasure of the witch because all these objects are carved in shapes that at the time were associated with either bringing good luck or protecting from the evil spirits. So archaeologists think that these objects pertained to a woman who people recognized these powers to. They went to her, asked for a charm. If they had any ailment or any bad luck or any suspicion, they would go to her and she would provide these objects. It fascinates me. And then we have a little bit of a spot, the victims. What we are looking at is not the victim itself, but the cast of the victims. This is a method that was employed by the very first archaeologists who found the ruins of Pompeii underneath the layers of ash and pumice and started excavating the city. This happened in the 1800s. Before that, the world had forgotten that there had to be there. It was completely covered up by all the debris left by the eruption. And these archaeologists thought of this way. They poured lime and plaster into the cavity left behind by the victim's flesh within its case of ash and pumice that had hardened with time. So basically we're left with the bones of the people are intact, but of course we don't have the flesh anymore, it decomposed. But what happened is they left a bubble of emptiness. This bubble gets filled with plaster and lime, and we get a perfect cast of what the body of the victim was. This was what they did. On a happier note, my suggestion would be, if you visit Pompeii, keep in mind the site could take on more than a day. If you're interested, you could roam the streets of Pompeii, of the ancient city, for 2 or 3 days before you see it all. If you do it when you exit, when you're at the end visit, I suggest you step into this building. It's called the Antiquarium, and it is the visitor center. So you find it at the entrance, but also when you exit through the same door, it's there. And being the visitor center is virtual aids that let you experience, for instance, Pompeii in 3D, or reconstructions that help you imagine, well, what it must have looked like when it was full, when it was whole. But it is also a museum. The majority of the artifacts and the objects and the casts of the victims and also the wall paintings are now not in Pompeii anymore, but they are held in the Naples National Archaeological Museum, of course, to protect them and not leave them out in the open at the mercy. but some were kept in Pompeii, and they are held in the rooms of the Antiquarium of this museum. So I think it's interesting to see. Also, the Antiquarium has a roof terrace, a flat roof terrace, that is a place I think it's worth stepping onto. It has a beautiful view of Vesuvius, of the surrounding ruins of the city. And as you see when this image was taken, it is also a place where they do temporary exhibitions. So it's used as an exhibition space for usually contemporary art exhibitions. Now, once you're done with visiting the ancient site of Pompeii, and I left a lot out, of course, because otherwise we would have been here for a couple months. But when you're done, if it's dinner time, my suggestion would be just a couple steps away from the exit of the site is this restaurant. It is called Capri, with a Latin name. If you remember, the diner that we visited virtually together before was called a Thermopolium. Caupona was another type of venue where food and wine were served to paying customers. So they had plenty different types, as we have bars and wine bars and cafes and restaurants. They had different. So Caupona was one of them. And I think this project is very interesting. The owners, they researched for a couple of years, and then they conceived a place that is built and decorated exactly as either a private home or a restaurant in ancient Pompeii would have. The tables are set with objects and cutlery that are copies of the ones that have been found in the site by archaeologists. So they are faithfully designed to follow the originals. The food that is served is prepared following ancient recipes. Maybe you recognize the loaf of bread on this table. It has the same shape and the same recipe as the one that was found in the site of Pompeii. And even the servers are all dressed up with clothes and garments designed in the style of the ancient Romans. So I think it's an experience to dine here. The food is really good, so it's also a very good dinner that you might enjoy when you visit Pompeii next. Now, we're at the site of Pompeii, and we are going to make our way towards the city of Sorrento. But I designed a stop between the two, halfway between the two. I'm going to take you to the town of Gragnano. Now, I'm taking you to Gragnano not because Gragnano is particularly beautiful. As you can see in this is basically it. Gragnano is a very, very small town in the hills, and it has nothing peculiar to see. But it is very, very famous in Italy and also the rest of the world for their production of pasta. Gragnano's pasta is the most famous and best pasta in the whole world. You see in a picture, in a very old photograph from the 1800s, the way that pasta, they used to dry up the pasta. So these two men are holding poles on their shoulders, and across the poles are laid these spaghetti type pasta to dry them up before packaging it. And even the city, in this image, we see sheets of pasta. These are not bed sheets. These are sheets of pasta prepared and then laid out exactly as if it were laundry. You see them also at the balconies in the people's homes, laid out in the sunshine, in the air to dry up. The town, and specifically this street, this is the main street that runs through Gragnano's center. This street was laid out and designed specifically for this purpose. It was designed in a way to be wide enough to be bathed in sunlight and in the warmth of the sun all day long, no matter what the time, exactly for this purpose. Now, they don't do this anymore, of course. For hygiene reasons, they now use machineries, but Gragnano is still to this day the place that produces the highest amount of pasta in Italy. And I want to say in the world, even if I didn't check this information, but I think it goes without saying that if it's the Italian production, it must be the world's highest production. Gragnano has a population of barely 30,000 people. They make up 5% of Italians' pasta production per year. And they also produce 10 million portions of pasta a day. So they have lots of establishments nowadays. This one is a very old one. They started producing pasta in the city in the 1500s, so during Renaissance times, and they never stopped. The pasta of Gragnano, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about this image. This is just a small suggestion. If you ever visit the city of Gragnano, you might want to know that just outside of the city is this place called the Valley of the Mills. Because of course, for so many centuries, machinery was not a thing yet. Before industrialization, the process was simply using mills, you know, to propel the grinders to make the flour. And so the valley out of Gragnano is filled with all the ruins of the 30 so mills that at one time were used, all 30, to produce the flour and the pasta. It is a nice hike. They also do guided tours at night because the valley is illuminated at night with all LED lights on the ruins. So it's something, it's very, you know, scenographic to do. It's something totally off the beaten path. Pasta in Gragnano was awarded a certification that reads IGP. To translate it for you guys in English, it would read Protected Geographical Indication. Now, this is a European certification, and whenever the mark of IGP on a product on the shelf in the supermarket, you know it's a product of quality. This is a standard of quality, and basically it means that the ingredients, so the agricultural products that go into that specific food, and also the process of producing that food, so all the phases of the process of production have to happen within the same geographical area decided by this protocol. So if you see this on a package of pasta, it means it comes from Gragnano because it's the only pasta in the world that was granted this certification. And it means that both the ingredients and the production and the packaging happened within the borders, the city limits of Gragnano and its valley. Now, for a little pasta 101, since we're doing an Italian trip, let's go into pasta, why not? Different types of pasta. I know you guys know these already. Spaghetti, penne. This is a little bit more difficult to pronounce. Maccheroni and shells, conchiglie in Italian. Now, let me tell you, now we have a religion in Italy, and that's Catholicism, very big with us. But then we have another cult, yeah? Maybe a little more informal and a little less declared, but the cult is how to pair the type of pasta with the right sauce. We are very fastidious with this, okay? And this is one of the reasons why, not the only one, but one of the reasons why the bow ties we call farfalle, we don't like them much. Especially because they are, you know, they are thicker in the middle and thinner at the border, so they don't cook thoroughly. We don't like them. We don't like them. Everything else that you see in this photo, absolutely yes, but each type pairs with its own sauce. We can get into this maybe in the Q&A later if you want to. To cap off the talk about pasta, let me tell you, don't ever believe Academy Award winner Italian actress Sophia Loren when she said, as she once did, everything you see I owe to pasta. No. If you eat a lot of pasta, you don't end up looking like her, unfortunately. I think she meant is everything you see I owe to the lack of pasta. Possibly. Yeah, maybe. Let's move on to Sorrento, our next stop. the beautiful, beautiful coast town of Sorrento, as you can see in the image, built on very high cliffs. In fact, when you walk through the streets of Sorrento, this is something that you typically could stumble upon. This is a hotel, but also private homes. They have their terraces or their buildings right on top of a very vertical cliff. The streets in Sorrento, these are two spots that you might see just by round. On the left is the main pedestrian street lined up with shops, and you see the mountains right there looming over the city. And to the right, the area of the marina, so at the level of the sea. That, of course, is strewn with coffee places and restaurants, so you can sit outside in the open and just enjoy the sunset and the night and have a meal on the water. Now, we cannot go through the city of Sorrento, which is also a stepping stone to get to the island of Capri later, but we cannot talk about Sorrento without talking about the famous lemon of Sorrento. This is a type of lemon, a type of citrus that was also awarded the IGP certificate I explained before. It is a fantastic lemon. If you've never had one, if you come to Italy, you have to try one. Lemon groves are everywhere in the region, not just in Sorrento. The whole Campania region is a big producer of lemons, so olive groves are everywhere. I want to take you to one in particular. This is called La Masseria. It's a farm that produces lemons, but not only. They also have olive trees, so they make olive oil and so on, vegetables and so on. They have an orchard, and is the lemon grove. This being my friend Ferdinando. Now, Ferdinando, he's the nephew of the founder of La Masseria, so he's third generation, and now he's passing on to his two sons, the running of the farm. So we are the fourth generation running La Masseria. In this photo, he is balancing, walking onto the poles that maybe you can tell are placed in this grid-like pattern on top of the lemon trees. So he's very high up above the ground. This is a very typical Sorrento way of growing lemon trees. The poles are placed there in the grid-like fashion to hold up nets. Now, in this picture, we see the nets rolled up. I don't know if you can tell. It's black fabric that has been rolled up. They can also be opened, of course, and stretched across the poles to cover the top of the trees. And this happens whenever it's either raining too much or it's too cold, if it hails, if it snows. So to protect the plants from any element in the weather that could disturb their growth, this is how they do it. They stretch nets over the plants. So sometimes you will drive maybe along the Amalfi Coast Drive, or you will be driving along the Sorrento Peninsula, and you will see these groves covered with black nets, and you don't see the plants. You will know that those are definitely for sure groves. This is the view from one of the terraces at La Masseria. So you see how we are not in downtown Sorrento. We are on the hills behind the city. They have a gorgeous, fantastic view. They would have us try all the types of jams, marmalades, olive oil with bread that they make. And especially we would be offered limoncello. Now, I read in the chat before, a lot of you, when Mara suggested grab yourself a wine, you were telling her that you were already ready with your limoncello. So I know you know what I'm talking about. Limoncello is a liquor. Don't be fooled by the small size of the glasses, though. I'm saying this because I've seen people do this. This is not a shot. This is not rum or vodka. You sip this. You sip this and you pace yourself, because the alcohol content of this baby is between 30 and 50%. So I've seen tourists traveling with me. I can't keep an, on everyone at any moment. So they just chug it with shots, and after 2 or 3, they don't realize, they stand up to go back at the hotel and they can't keep their balance. So this is really, really strong. This type of liquor in Italy, it's served after meals, especially after a big meal, big dinner, and we call it digestivo, which literally means digestive. So it is a liquor that helps you process a big meal, And we are never, ever in a rush in Italy, especially here in the south. So we've had dinner with our family or our friends. We're set around the table. We get served our limoncello. We just sip it. We chat the night away. We take our time and enjoy. Yeah, so this is the limoncello experience for you. Now we go back downtown in Sorrento. We're now looking at the main square in town. We have to make our way to Capri, and to make our way to Capri, we have to get to the marina to get on a ferry. So looking right from this picture, this is what we would see. We are very high up above the level of the sea. We have to get to that road and walk way to the marina. It is down there. How do we get there? Why? By these stairs, of course, very conveniently placed there, very vertical. If you have a problem with heights like me, you might get a little dizzy, but it's the only way, really. So we go down the steps, we walk along the streets, and finally we get to the, and we can wave goodbye to Sorrento. We are now on our ferry, on our way to the island of Capri. So this is our path. Click, Capri. We see Capri from the water, and we can already tell that it's a very rocky, very rugged, lots of high cliffs. This is what Capri looks like. And this is what it looks like in the map. Capri has two towns on the island, one to the west called Capri and one to the east called Capri town. So Capri is both the name of the whole island and of one of the two municipalities on the island. Both these cities are on very high ground, so they are both up top mountains, and only in between them is a valley. We arrive, of course, at the shore, at the main port, which is up there and is called Marigrande. And this is it. So this is our first glimpse of the island of Capri. The houses that you see up top the mountain, those are the city of Capri. So that's where we're going next. The water at even in the port, in the harbor, is fantastic in Capri. How do we get up there? We need to choose a mean of transportation, and there are several to choose from. So we could go for a classic taxi. This is a very typically Capri-looking cab. You see how it is opened in the back with a shelter on top so you can enjoy the view while you're doing the drive. Or a little cheaper, we could go with the public bus. This is, I know it looks like a toy, but it's actually the public bus in Capri. They are tiny because the street is very narrow and the curves are hairpin. So they do have to drive up these roads. It is a perfectly viable option, of course, taking the public bus. But then what if this happens? And it happens. So my choice for today, guys, and for me tonight would be to use the funicular. The funicular is usually what tourists choose. It is extremely cheap. It goes in a straight line up the mountain, so you don't have to go through all the curves of the road. And it is also sustainable. Let's use the funicular. Once you get at the level where the city is, the funicular leaves you here. Exactly where this panoramic terrace is, we are already on public soil. This is not a private terrace. And if you step on it, looking towards the sea, this would be your beautiful view. You can maybe see that there is the pier down there. That's where we arrived with our ferry, ideally. And if you look the other way, you also have a beautiful view of the mountain and of the climbing the mountain. Now, from the panoramic terrace, we make very few steps away. You can see it in the picture. To the left, the blue is the sea and panoramic terrace that we were on just now. This little square connected to that space is probably the most famous spot on the island of Capri. It's called La Piazzetta. In Italian, it means, in English, La Piazzetta means the cute square, which I think it's very romantic. And the little square in Capri is actually very, very little. It is very cute. It is filled with all the tables and the chairs from all the cafes around the sides of the square. And let me tell you, to sit down in one of the cafes in La Piazzetta in Capri, sip a coffee or a cappuccino or a limoncello if the time is right in the day, and just people watch and be sure that you are seen sitting at the cafe in La Piazzetta, this is the non plus ultra of exclusivity. It is a status symbol to sit here at one of the cafes. Prices, very, very high, of course. To give you an idea of what the city of Capri looks like, this is another photo of the same square, and you see that big fat white building looming over the square. That is a church. You know, us Italians, we build a church every 1 or 2 houses, right? So even on the island of Capri, even if the towns are very small, 7,000 inhabitants each, so 14,000 total on the island, we have several churches. This is the biggest one though, dedicated to Saints. But what I wanted to point your attention to is, you see where the door of the church is, right? We are looking at the side. We can glimpse the main side where the door, you see how it is crammed in a very, very tight alleyway. This is how Capri was built. So this is what it looks like when you walk through its streets. Left, one of the main pedestrian streets, so a little bit wider, with lots of shops, and the mountain looming over you. It's never too far away. On the right, an alleyway in a more residential area. So the doors that you see are private homes. You see how tiny the alleyway is. No cars, of course, within these, only on the main street going around the island. Couple steps away from La Piazzetta, from the cute square, we would bump into this establishment. Now, this is a hotel. It's called Quisisana, but it has a very long history. It was created in the 1800s by a doctor, and it wasn't created as a hotel originally. Capri was a place where many people that had chest ailments were sent, like tuberculosis, for instance, because it was said to have a very healthy air. So, you know, the breezy sea air and the sun and the warmth, it was all considered very healthy to cure these ailments. So this doctor opened up this structure to be a sanatorium, a place where people could be cured. And he named it Quisisana. Quisisana is not a family name. Quisisana is 3 Italian words put together that mean here one heals. So here one can get a cure for whatever it is that they have. Upon the death of the doctor, already his widow turned it into a hotel. We are in the 1800s. Capri is big famous with the foreign communities in Europe. So lots of people, and wealthy people especially, are coming to visit, even just to be tourists, not because they are sick or anything. So they saw a potential. They turned it into a hotel, and the property changed several times in time. Quisisana is one of the most exclusive hotels in the world, okay? So prices-wise, not so affordable, but let's drool a little bit together. I did, but I'll drool again. So this is a glimpse of the inside of the hall. So the ground floor of the hotel, once you step inside. This is one of the many saunas they have within their very famous spa. You see how it is decorated in mosaic in the Pompei style. And this is an overview of the property with their huge swimming pool. They do lots of weddings, of course, lots of destination weddings in this setting. If you do want to know the prices, I did look it up. If we talk about the high season, so the summer, the least expensive room, which is a double standard, it's going to be $536, I think, a night. The most expensive, the junior suite, $1,260 something a night. So very expensive. On from Quisisana and do more affordable things. This is a lovely street that, as you can see, it's opened on one side. Capri has a climate that allows for vegetation, lushes all year round. It's filled with flowers, with plants, with trees, with bushes. It's fantastic all year round. Now, along the street, had we been walking, if we looked left, where you see the very low fence, this would be our view. And what is this this build between us and the sea? This is it, the Charterhouse of St. James. So it's an old convent, really, really old. It was built in the Middle Ages, in the very early Middle Ages. If you do visit the island of Capri, I suggest you step in this place. It has courtyards and cloisters and love spots to photograph and to just, get some quiet from all the crowds of tourists in the more famous places. It has lovely gardens also to visit. And it's the namesake for a shop that we would have on our right-hand side on the same street. It overlooks where the Charterhouse is. This shop is called Carthusia or Cartusia, and they make perfume. Now, they are linked to the Charterhouse, to the convent that we just saw. How come? Legend goes that in the very early Middle Ages, we're talking about the 1300s here, 700 years ago, the abbot of the convent heard that the queen was coming to visit unannounced, and he hadn't had prepared anything to welcome her properly. So he very hastily put together flowers just by ripping them from his garden. He placed them in a vase with water in the room that they would give to the queen. After 3 days, he took the vase and the flowers to throw them out, and he realized that the water had taken on a scent, a lovely scent that he had never smelled before. He couldn't identify it. So he gave to the alchemist monk, and the alchemist monk was able to deduce which flower was responsible for the perfume. And they say this is how the first perfume, at least of the island of Capri, was born. Now, Cartusia is a perfume brand. They're famous throughout the world. They have lots of shops throughout the world. This is one of the shops they have on the island of Capri. In my opinion, is the most beautiful one. So my suggestion would be step inside. There's no need to buy anything. You just step inside. They will let you try and spritz so many perfumes. The shop is beautiful just to look at. It looks like an ancient chemistry or pharmacy directly from the 1800s. If you are interested in perfumes and if you like what you smell, then a little bottle of perfume from Krupp is the perfect souvenir or the perfect gift to bring back home. They have them in all shapes and sizes, and they're not too expensive. They are still to this day all made only using the flowers local to the island of Capri. So the flowers that grow on the island. So this is a nice little thing to know. The next thing that we would encounter along this street is this little kiosk. Here, you see how beautiful it is. It is all decorated with citrus. These are real citrus, so lemons and oranges. And I'm taking you here because here you are going to enjoy the most spectacular lemon slushy in the world. Granita al limone in Italian. Let me tell you, they freshly squeeze the lemons or the oranges in front of you to make this. It is fantastic. It's very cheap. It's like a takeaway thing. It's a street food thing. You can either drink it sitting down on the low wall in front of the kiosk, and this is the view that you enjoy, or as we are doing tonight, we take it away with us to bring to our next stop. These beautiful gardens just at the end of the street that we were walking onto, the gardens of Augustus. This is a public on the island of Capri. There is a little admission fee of €1, so $1 to get in. The gardens are fantastic. They are beautifully laid out with flowers, with trees. They bloom all year because of the different types of plants that they chose. And they also house a collection of sculptures in the open air. So they are just a lovely place, a lovely oasis to just walk around. And then they have the structure in the middle that you see here. That is a panoramic terrace. So you can ascend it. And if you are on top of the terrace, if you look left, this would be your view. From here, we can also see those big rocks in the middle of the sea. Those are the Faraglioni, is how you spell it. The Faraglioni rocks are 3 stacks in the middle of the ocean, very close to the coast of the island of Capri. They pertain to the island of Capri, and they are probably the most typical symbol for the island of Capri, the Faraglioni rocks. They are beautiful. Whatever your point of view, this was from another spot on the island. They're gorgeous. From the terrace, going back to our terrace in the gardens, looking the other way and down, this would be what you see. This is Via Krupp. Via means a street or road in Italian. So Krupp Road. Krupp is the name of the guy who built this road. This is a way with these hairpin turns that connects the level of the gardens, which is also the level of the whole city of Capri, all the way down to the water. But we are now on the other side of the island, one that we came in with the ferry. So on this other side, there is another little port, the smaller one of the two of the island of Capri. This is Marina Piccola, the other was Marina Grande, big marina, small marina. And Mr. Krupp in the 1800s, he was a German gentleman who fell in love with Capri, decided to move here as so many other foreigners at the time. He was living out of his 5-room suite, Quisisana Hotel, and he had his vessel at anchor at this little port here. So he was an industrialist and he produced steel. He was very extremely rich. Krupp is still a name in the steel, so it is a family with a very, very long industrial history. But he also dabbled in marine biology. He had a passion for it. So he had his vessel with all the instruments on it to sail and do his research at sea. So every day he went up and down, and there was no road at his time connecting the two levels, the hotel, the city, and the marina down there. He went to the mayor and he said, look, what if I pay to have a road paved to connect the two levels? Could I do this? Would you be happy with it? And the mayor thought about it and he said, absolutely, please do it. It was a public utility, of course, it would be a public road. So Mr. Krupp bought this whole chunk of island, designed and had the gardens made, and then he also paid for the paving of this road, and hence the name remained. It is a lovely pathway to take. It is also very often used as an open air exhibition space for contemporary art exhibitions. So it is really lovely, not too crowded. Sometimes, unfortunately, you might find it closed because falling is a problem on this spot. So sometimes it will be closed because of the rubble coming down, but mainly they keep it free of the rocks so that you can visit it. Visiting the other town on the island, Anacapri. In Greek means above. So Anacapri is just a city above the city of Capri, because this one is higher up on the mountains than the city of Capri. It looks very much the same, and the streets are very much looking the same. You've got your whitewashed walls, you've got your bougainvilleas, your oleander trees, the flowers, the shops, very much looking like Capri. There is a little difference though. The real people from Capri, they live here. They don't live in Capri city, they live in Anacapri. So this is a little more authentic, if you will. And there are two places that I want to take you to in Anacapri. One is this gorgeous villa, San Michele. We are now within its gardens, very, very famous gardens. Now, the villa was built as a private residence by a Swedish gentleman, a psychoanalyst, who decided to move to Capri in the 1800s. Again, it happened a lot. And he built this villa as his residence. Now the villa is publicly owned by the city and it has been turned into a museum. So you can visit it with a very little admission ticket. Those are beautiful. They also have a fantastic view. If you keep the column as your point of reference to the left, you will see the piers. That is the Marina Grande, the one where we ideally arrived with our ferry, so the bigger port. And to the right of the column, if you see in this, that cluster of white houses, that's the city of Capri. So you see how higher above ground we are. And the villa is, again, a museum. So it is filled with works of art. It has these openings that make the inside and the outside and the gardens connect and communicate. Every tiny detail was thoroughly by the Swedish gentleman. So it's designed with a lot of taste and it's beautiful to visit. The second thing I'm showing you on this side of the island is the chairlift. The chairlift starts from the center of the town of Anacapri and takes you all the way up to the mountain on the island, Mount Solaro. So this is the view that you would enjoy once you get up top. There is one cafe and one panoramic terrace. It's a 360 degrees view all around you. From this point of view, we're looking at the rest of the island of Capri. So the town down there nestled in that little valley is the town of Capri. To the right off the coast, you see the Faraglioni rocks that we saw before closer up. And then in the distance, that other piece of land, That is the peninsula that we were coming from, and then we are also going to return to in a second. From the town of Anacapri, we have to make our way back down to the sea level, to go back to the marina, to go back to our ferry, which is waiting for us. And how do we do this? I always choose the easiest way, this staircase. Maybe you see it, it's that zigzag that you see carved in the rock. It is called the Phoenician stairway. This is a very, very ancient stairway. It was built during Roman times. So this baby here is almost it's more than 2,000 years old, because it was built in the 7th century BC. So it is 2,700 years old, 921 steps, a little more than a mile long, but come on, we're doing it downwards. Yeah, we're going downhill. So it's going to be easy, and it's going to give us the last beautiful views of the island that we're about to leave. So from Capri, we make our way back to the mainland, and we finally start our drive along the Amalfi coast. We're going to have 3 stops, if you remember from the outline. The first one being Positano. It's the first one that we will encounter. Then we move on to the town of Amalfi, names the coast, and we finish off in lovely Ravello. Let's go. So the famed Amalfi Drive, what's all the fuss about? So for the ones of you who've been, you know. For the ones of you who haven't, look at this. This is fantastic. These mountains, it looks like they plunge directly into the sea. And there is this very narrow strip of road that has been paved along the coast to connect all the different towns that dot the coast. The Amalfi Drive has an official name. Yeah, in Italy, it's called the 163. What is an SS? It's a state street. So it's a state highway, basically. It pertains to the state and to the government. They have to maintain it. They have to pay for it. This is what it means. But it has also taken on lots of nicknames. For us Italians, we refer to it as Nastro Azzurro, which means the blue ribbon, because of the colors of the scenery. And some of you guys I know abroad, you know it as the Mamma Mia Road, for good reason. This is the scenery, or one of. It changes, of course, in a very short span of more or less 30 miles. It changes a lot. You see that the fence is very, very small. It's very short. Sometimes when you're driving along the coast, or you're a passenger in the passenger seat and someone else is driving, because otherwise you wouldn't take your eyes off the road, believe me, you look at the fence and you think, will it serve its purpose if it needs to? And you feel like the answer is no. And you're probably right. I've never seen an accident on the Amalfi Drive, so they happen not so frequently, really. So this was just out of a joke. But it is very, very unsafe looking, let's say. It runs in some spots very above the level of the sea, but it also changes height, yeah, because it changes levels, because it follows very much the shape of the land. It really sometimes is breathtaking. It has some spots that are fantastic, fantastic. This is the Fjord. Look at the light, look at the coloring of the water. This is not a photoshopped picture. And also nature is breathtaking, is very dramatic, the scenery that you have around you. And it's gorgeous, even on a foggy day, like the one that we see in this image. Now, the water also, sorry, it's fantastic. You do dare look down when you are in the passenger seat. This is the clear blue water that you would be looking into. So boats everywhere, and also sunbathers on all the very tiny, small rocky beaches that you have along the coast. This image, I put it in, you will let me know if this is clear. If you look at rock, side where the rock is, where the cliff is, maybe you can tell there's a net, a vertical net. And this is because here too, rock falling is a problem. Even more than in that little tiny street in Capri, because this is a street that has a lot of traffic throughout the year, especially in the summer. So rock falling is a big problem. It's better if it doesn't happen. So these nets have been placed to contain the rocks and avoid them falling onto the street. Why is it so famous? Why is the Amalfi Coast so famous? We have to thank Hollywood. recently. In the 1800s, as I told you before, as I hinted before, lots of foreigners that came to the south of Italy, mainly to see the ruins and Rome, you know, the famous places, and then they stumbled upon this type of places like the Amalfi Coast or the island of Capri or the city of Sorrento, and they just fell in love with the picturesque scenery and the little small towns and hamlets and the gorgeous coloring of everything they laid their eyes on. And they wrote about it because they were very famous poets or literate men, writers, novelists. So they wrote about it and they brought back the news with them of how beautiful this corner in Italy was, and they made it famous. So already in the 1800s. And then came Hollywood, of course. In the 1950s, a couple of movies, of Hollywood movies, were shot and set here. One for All, Ulysses, with Kirk Douglas acting as Ulysses in 1953. It was shot and set in this land. And this gave fame, of course, to the Amalfi Coast. It gave it fame on the other side of the pond, yeah, in the US and in the English-speaking world, let's say. And then came Jackie. Jackie vacationed on the Amalfi Coast in the summer of 1962. She came with her sister, with her brother-in-law, with her son and daughter. You can see how the people plastered these posters all over the place. Welcome, Jacqueline. Good is Jacqueline, means nothing in English, but you know, the sentiment was clear. They loved her, and she loved this place, loved this holiday. She loved the people. She went back to the US and she expressed how this, in her opinion, had been the best holiday of her entire life. So much so, we are in the summer of 62, that she wanted to come back with John to buy a house, to come back for their holidays year after year. We all know why this couldn't happen. This didn't happen in the end. She did give a lot of prestige to the area. She put it in the spotlight for everyone in the world. She was photographed a lot, of course, during this vacation. And this brought a lot of fame to the Amalfi Coast. Everyone wanted to vacation here suddenly. And then more recently, Hollywood is still helping us. This is one of the most recent movies shot here in 2005, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It is also said that on the set of this movie, it's when the romance between Brad and Angelina, or Brangelina, when Brangelina happened, when it all started. So the gossip also helps a lot. There was a movie shot, they just finished shooting it, so it's going to be released, I think, next year. And it's featuring Kevin Spacey, and it's called Gore. Not because it's a horror movie, but because it's about Gore Vidal, the writer, because he lived in one of the cities that we're going to see together on tonight's virtual tour. So it tells the story from the perspective of the Amalfi Coast home that he had. This place is called, not just nowadays, but in its history, it was referred to the land of the mermaids. Not these mermaids, though. These are the mermaids that we think of when we say the word. We're actually talking for the Amalfi Coast about sirens. Sirens as the ancient Greeks imagined them. So they were mythological creatures, imagined creatures, cruel. They had the body of a bird and either the upper body or just the head of a woman. So not half fish, half woman, but half bird, half woman. And they were said to live here. These three tiny islands or rocks in the middle of the water is what first thing that you see when you start driving along the Amalfi Drive. These three islands, they're called Ligali Islands. They are very tiny. No one lives on these islands, but this is the place where Homer, in his Iliad and Odyssey, when he talked about Ulysses wanting to hear the song of the sirens, of the mermaids, he says they live here. And so the name Ligalli in Italian translates into English with Rooster Islands. And you see how the name of the islands still retains the memory of these mythological creatures being half bird, half woman. Again, close up on the islands, very tiny. You see some buildings on this bigger one. They are privately owned and they are rented out to tourists. It is a beautiful place to have a vacation. These are very luxury villas on top of the island. Just know that if you want to rent them out, it's between $100,000 and $150,000 per week to rent the whole island. And it's either the whole thing or nothing. So it is very, very expensive. Now, finally, and very ironically so, given what we just said about sirens not being half fish, half woman, but half bird, half woman, the bigger one of the three islands has the shape of a fish, or a dolphin, or a mermaid, maybe, if you will. Now, these three islands, they pertain, administratively speaking, to one of the towns on the costa, which is our next stop. The lovely, gorgeous, fantastic, exclusive, glamorous Positano. Everyone has heard of Positano, yeah? There's Positano sandals, there's Positano fashion, La Dolce Vita is in Positano, and so it's a beautiful, picturesque town. I'm showing it to you from the perspective of someone coming from the water, so on a ferry or on a private boat, if you have one, which would be my suggestion if you have the chance, because it is a spectacular way of just taking it all in for your first glimpse. And there are ferry lines running from Sorrento or making all the stops along the Amalfi Coast during the summer. So it is something that is very much doable. It's not something just for super rich people. Positano, as you can see, has been built almost carved into the rock. All these houses hustled one on top of the other, climbing the side of the hill. Positano takes on incredible with the different times of the day. So at sunset, it takes on the colors of the sunset, and at night, it's just a cluster of lights with the darkness as a backdrop from the mountain. It is really a magical fairy tale-like place. The streets in Positano look like this. It is very picturesque, very quaint. It is very heavily touristic. If you come very high touristic season in June, July, and August, and possibly even September, it's going to be very, very crowded. This is a unique no crowds image, yeah. But it is still, in my opinion, lots of staircases in Positano to go from one level of the city to the next, because of course no cars, just the Amalfi Coast Drive, the Mamma Mia road that goes that cuts it in half and goes through it. But then you have to leave your car in the garage, in the parking lot. Of course you pay to leave your car there, and then you go on foot. They say the owner of the parking lot is one of the richest men in Positano, in fact, and it's probably, possibly very, very true. Any sons? I've checked. Little squares everywhere also. You see to the left a staircase, the side of a staircase, and then little squares that open up suddenly with all the tiny shops. Fashion is very big in Positano. Positano fashion, it's a style in fashion that was invented here because it was worn here in the 1950s, in the 1960s, in the swinging 60s. So either VIPs shown in pictures or on newsreels, or locals wearing these very flowy, very colorful dresses. They made a statement and it stuck, and it became the Positano fashion. Now you have all shops selling these types of clothing. Jeans, blue jeans were introduced in Italy from Positano. It was the place where they became where it became fashionable to wear them in Italy. And also the bikini was introduced in Italy from Positano. Why? The bikini has kind of a long history. It was invented in the 40s by a Frenchman, a mathematician, and he called it bikini from the name of the atoll in the Marshall Islands, because that was a place where they were doing bombing experiments with the atom bomb, and he thought that the garment that he was designing would have an atomic effect or a bomb effect once placed on the market, and it did. It was scandalous at the beginning for women to uncover so much of their flesh. And in Italy, it was illegal for a long time, whereas across the ocean in the US, it was already something that was accepted and used. In Italy, it was still, we are the country where the Vatican is, so we have very high morality standards, even though sometimes we are too rigid, and they were considered illegal. We had policemen patrolling the beaches, check women were wearing a two-piece bathing suit and placing fines if they found someone who did. And there is a very famous, I don't know if it's a legend or an actual story, but it happened apparently in Positano in 1949, when a policeman approached a lady on the beach who's wearing a bikini, and he's sweating in his uniform, and he goes, I'm sorry, miss, but you cannot wear a two-piece suit. You have to wear one piece. And very wittily, apparently she responded, absolutely, officer, which one should I keep? So, but it is true, maybe this is a legend, but it is true, Positano is the place where the bikini became accepted, and then it spread throughout the rest of Italy. So Positano was, you know, in the foreground for these types of things regarding fashion. Actually, this is just a very brief thing in brackets. The bikini was the way before. This is a mosaic in a Roman villa in Sicily. This is a story for another time, of course, but we can see that even in Roman times, ladies were wearing two pieces bathing suits. So just, you know, just to let the French know. Again, Positano, in a larger view, to show you also the big beach that they have at the foot of the town and the huge church. Maybe you can tell there's a huge church with the dome. We see the back of it. That is not the only church in Positano, of course. Positano is a very small 3,000 people, 3,000 inhabitants town. They have more than one church you can be, but this is the main one and the biggest one of all. This is the dome, a little bit more with a close-up. The multicolored tiles that are hand painted, by the way, I want to show you a typical craft of this region. They are extremely famous, and the tradition, it's a very long historical tradition that started in the Amalfi Coast, in one of the towns of the Amalfi Coast. So these domes, you see them everywhere while you're driving along the Amalfi Coast. For instance, we move on to our next destination, Midway, we would see this. If you can see in the distance, the town on the hill, that is Positano. So we left it and we moved along the Amalfi Drive. And this is the Church of San Gennaro in one of the smaller hamlets along the Amalfi Coast. So these domes are everywhere. If you go and you see them, or if you've been and you've seen them and you didn't know, that's why. It's the local craft, they're proud of it. They try to employ it even in public spaces, in the streets, on the churches, on the roofs, in the terraces, other than, you know, they sell also plates and glasses and cups and so on. So our next stop is going to be the town of Amalfi, the namesake for the whole region. Amalfi is beautiful, even if maybe it's a little less famous other than the name than Positano. Maybe you haven't seen images of Amalfi as much as you've seen Instagrammed photos of Positano. But there is a saying about Amalfi that tells you a lot of how lovely the town is. And the saying goes, for the people of Amalfi who will go to heaven, Judgment Day like any other. And this is to refer to how beautiful Amalfi is. Again, a picture of Amalfi as you would see it approaching by the sea, from the sea. And like Positano, like all these towns, it is nestled in these very crooked valleys with this dramatic mountain looming over it. The streets in Amalfi look like this. They are a very typical type of looking alley or street in this part of Italy, with shops street. Those flying arches that you see, they come from a very old tradition, from their history. This is a place, Amalfi, it gives its name to the whole coast, not because it's the towns. We're visiting towns that are all between 2,000 and 3,000 inhabitants. They're very small towns. Amalfi gives its name because it's the most important city historically speaking. It has a very long, very rich history. Amalfi became famous, powerful, and very rich already before the year 1000. So in the very early Middle Ages, in the 9th century, in the 800s, Amalfi was already chartered. It already had a bishop. So it was a very important maritime city with a very powerful. What happened is, being so powerful, being so wealthy, it was the object of many pirate raids. And the Mediterranean was strewn with pirate ships at the time. So these flying arches are what remain of a system that the citizens of Amalfi had devised to save themselves during a pirate attack. Instead of doing as everybody else was doing on the coast, just retreating, leaving their homes and retreating up in the hills and the mountains, waiting for the pirates to raid the city and then leave back to their homes, the people of Amalfi, they devised a way of locking all the doors at street level and connecting at a level way above the street level all the buildings in town, so they could go from one place in town to another, to any other place in town, without having to pass down in the street. It was like a suspended city. And these arches, of course, they don't use it anymore. Now that the houses are all closed off, they don't communicate, but the arches that you see in the alleyways are what remain of this system. The main landmark in Amalfi is definitely their cathedral, their Duomo. Look how out of scale this place is. Amalfi, I told you, it's a very small town. You've seen how the streets look like. This is their cathedral. It's huge. It's a Middle Ages cathedral built in this very peculiar style. You don't find it just in Amalfi, this white marble bicolor style with these types of arches and that design. This is typical of coastal towns in Italy, especially in the south, and it's the mixture of styles: Italian Renaissance, Norman, and Moorish. Why? Because in coastal towns in the Middle Ages, the sailors went out, or the soldiers went out with the fleet, and then they roamed the Mediterranean, and maybe they went on a crusade to the Holy Lands in Jerusalem, or they went to Libya and Turkey and Northern Africa, and then they came back to their homes, and they brought back news, and they told what they have seen. They brought back everything that they had captured with their eyes and that they had marveled at, you know, something new, something never seen in their homeland, and they influenced the style of the local builders and designers and architects. So this, when you see a bicolor church in Italy, usually that is the reason. This church also has its own bell tower with the colored hand-painted tiles that are the local craft. Very difficult to take it all in one picture because you've seen how stretched out and wide it is. But my suggestion, the real reason for me at least to visit this church, is their cloister. Their cloister is beautiful. It's an oasis of peace, especially when all the tourists are packed in the streets of Amalfi. This place is quiet. It has gorgeous plants. It has gorgeous views of the blue sky and of the outside, but it's super silent. It's a meditative place, and really, it's fantastic. It's cool in the summer, in the shade. So my suggestion is visit the Duomo. It's worth it. Even if you're churched out, which I know you are when you come to Italy, go to the Duomo in Amalfi. Amalfi is also famous for one other thing, the paper that they produce. The paper in Amalfi is called bambagina. Now, bambagia or bambagina in Italian means cotton, because this paper is not made out of cellulose, it's made out of fabric, out of rugs. This is a traditional, very, very old historic way of producing paper. It is still produced to this day by just one or two family and production plants. You can visit the museum of the whole phases of the productions. One of the mills is kept open as a museum of this type of craft. They produce this paper is a very high quality paper. It's very expensive because the process, again, it's very long and it's artisanal. It's not industrialized. So it is a very expensive paper. As you can tell by the photo, people usually use this paper for their wedding participations, so for their wedding invitations. It's an okay paper. You don't use it every day. But in history, popes, kings, emperors, rulers, princes, they have all used the Amalfi Bambagina paper. This is to say goodbye to Amalfi. One last photo, because we've seen the pasta sheets in Gragnano, remember, laid out as laundry in the streets. The same thing happens with this type of paper. One of the processes of production is to dry out the sheets of paper after they've been in the water, and they do it as so. It looks exactly like the pasta in Gragnano. Next and last, I know I've been very, very long, but look at what wealth of places and of things in this region. How could I have been any shorter? Ravello is the last town we visit together. I thought of, what if I had to recap the three cities in one word each? And I would call them, if they were three sisters, I would call Positano the glamorous, Amalfi the historical, and Ravello the intellectual. Now, Ravello is a lovely coastal town. It's up in the hills, actually, so it's a little bit higher up in the hills than anything we've seen so far. but it's a lot of gorgeous views of the coast. This is the main square where the cathedral is, but I'm not going to talk about a church here. I'm going to talk about two villas. This is what made Ravello famous worldwide. One is Villa Cimbrone. Now it has been turned into a hotel. It was a private residence originally, of course, but even if it's an establishment, its gardens are open to visitors. You have to book it online. There is an admission ticket. It's very low price. I'm telling you, it's worth the cost. Villa Cimbrone is famous for, this is what they call the crypt, and look at what views it has. It's opened onto the hills and the wall. This they call the Avenue of Immense. I mean, right? Who wouldn't want to walk underneath this wisteria? And the Terrace of Infinity, also these romantic names that were given in the 1800s when the villa was built. The other villa that is very, very famous in Ravello is Villa Ruffolo. Villa Ruffolo also was originally a private residence, but it is now owned by the state. So it is part of our patrimony. It can be visited. It's run by a foundation. It has a couple of lovely Middle Ages towers. One that's been turned into a museum regarding the villa. And this one, it's been emptied out, filled with a glass stairway that takes you up to the top, which is now a panoramic flat terrace. So you have a gorgeous 360 degrees view over the mountains, the city, and the sea. It's a Moorish cloister. Even private owners liked this style at the time. And its gardens. Its gardens are famous. It's what made the town Ravello famous. The most important, probably, personality who came to Ravello and fell in love with Ravello is Richard Wagner, the composer in 1800s. He was a host, he was a guest in Villa Ruffolo. The owners of Villa Ruffolo were his friends. And when he saw these gardens, he was surprised and astonished because he thought, and he wrote it down so we know his firsthand thoughts, he thought, oh my God, this is exactly the place that I thought of while I was writing my opera, Parsifal. So he felt a connection to this place. And he revisited and he talked about Ravello so much that Ravello fell in love with Richard Wagner, and they became known as the city of music. And to this day, Villa Ruffolo, as a homage, as a nod to this very important personality and guest who was so kind with Ravello, houses the Ravello Festival every summer. They house it in the garden that we were just looking at. That is where the seats for audience get placed. And then they built this temporary stage suspended over midair. The backdrop is the coastline and the water of the Amalfi Coast. This is on my bucket list. It lasts the 3 summer months. It just ended mid-September, so every year you can find the website online for next year's edition, and you might be able, if you are visiting the Amalfi Coast, to get tickets and see it live. As usual, I didn't say this at the beginning, and I'm sorry for the ones of you who never participated. But as usual, Mara will send out an email, and in the email, I have also included some links to videos, mainly YouTube videos, because I can never show you video clips on Zoom. They go out of sync, it doesn't work, so I can't do it. But there are so many things that I would like to show you the footage of so that you can see the things in movement. And one of this is a little brief clip of one concert in Ravello at Villa Ruffolo. One last scene. We are looking back at the Amalfi Coast, what we've seen so far. This picture has it all in it. It's a good compendium. You've got the colorful domes. You've got the houses built on top of each other on the side of the vertical cliff. You've got the blue water, the blue sky, the terraces that the people here use to grow their crops. So this is a really good image of what we've seen so far. As usual, I like to say goodbye and to finish my presentations by taking you to dinner. And I'm taking you to a very special place tonight. This restaurant is called Torre Normanna. These towers, you will see them everywhere either square like this one or round ones along the coast were watchtowers. You remember that I told you about how many pirate raids there were and how many pirate ships in the Mediterranean? So this was the system devised. It was a series of towers all along the coast. The first tower signal danger with a torch and some sound signals, and then the next tower will hear it and pass it on and pass it on and pass it on. This is the oldest one. It was built in 1250 in the 1200s, in the 13th century, and it has now been turned into one of the best restaurants, in my opinion, in the area. This is the top terrace, the setting in the top terrace. They also have a very romantic 2 people only table down on the cliff, on the rocks, right at the water level. So if you're maybe, you know, celebrating an anniversary or something special like that, you might want to choose this table. But tonight it's 6,000 of us, so we are going to have dinner here. And of course, I am going to want you to try Her Majesty pizza. We haven't talked about pizza yet. Pizza comes from this region. Too many things, but the pizza in this restaurant is special. I don't know if you can tell, but it is served in this very unique copper pan. It is a way of cooking pizza. It's a traditional way of cooking pizza, but it's dying out. So the people home, not so much in restaurants anymore because it takes a little bit longer to cook, but in this place they still do it like this. And we have been visiting several UNESCO World Heritage Sites tonight. For the ones of you who followed the colleague's Li Jun presentation on China, he mentioned the UNESCO World Heritage Sites they have in China. We have the same amount. Italy and China have the highest number in the world, 55 Italy, 55 China. We've visited several tonight. The Pompei site was included in the UNESCO list. The whole Amalfi Coast was included. Let me tell you, we're finishing off with another one, because the art of making pizza and the pizza as a product of this art were included by UNESCO in 2017 as a world treasure. So, and thank God they did, right? We don't want to forget how to make well. 3 last advices. If you are interested in Capri and its history or its way of life, actually, this book was written by the Swedish gentleman who built the Villa San Michele that now is a museum. He wrote this memoir, this autobiography, The Story of San Michele. You find it on Amazon, even on the Kindle version. Cheap, and it's a lovely book that tells us a lot about life in Capri in the 1800s. And then 2 movies, because I love movies. The one to the left, The Postman, is an Italian movie from the 90s. It is a fantastic movie. Watch it if you haven't done so yet. 5 Academy Award nominations, among which Best Picture. It was really a fantastic masterpiece. And to the right, something lighter. This is a Billy Wilder movie, Avanti Avanti, with Jack Lemmon, set partly. So I hope you enjoy, and I hope you enjoyed tonight's presentation. Thank you for your attention.
That was awesome. That was so good. Thank you so much. Oh my, I don't know, where can I fit in a tour to the Amalfi Coast in the next couple of years? We've pushed back so many tours that were overloaded, but I so want to go now. So maybe I'm just going to have to do that as a side tour at some point. So Elena, thank you so much. I mean, I understand and I know that you could probably do this with your eyes closed if we were just driving along, but I understand how much work it takes to prepare the presentation and do the research that you need to do to prepare it on technology, even though you're getting pretty awesome with the technology. So I know that that is the case. But I wanted to say that at this point, we're going to look at the Q&A. We're going to look at the questions and address them. Just so everyone knows, we do have some future tours coming up that I just want to share with you real quickly before we dive into the Q&A. And here's a screen of them. If you want to take a screenshot of them or you want to get them with your phone, I will quickly just go over them. We have an African safari, New Zealand, Germany, Transylvania, Japan, Scotland, Alaska, and Vienna, and more to come after that. Now we're going to go into the Q&A, and Elena and I will tag team these as she addresses the questions. They are coming in fast and furious. So I just want to say thank you again. Please, anybody who's out there that is interested in getting the information, I've had many questions. So I will send out an email tomorrow. The tipping information will go in that email as well as Elena's information that she is providing as extra research or resources that she's giving you for links. So know that both of them are there. It is 20 minutes of the hour at this, or no, 10 minutes to the hour at this point. We have hundreds and hundreds of questions, I think, coming in. Elena will go through them as best as she can and address as many as possible. This is sort of like the rapid fire part of the tour. So sit back, and if you want to enjoy a glass of wine with Elena and the Q&A, let's do it. Elena, when you're ready, we could start at the top, and just do me a favor and read the question before you answer it so the audience knows what the question was.
Okay, I'm ready. I will read out the questions. I just wanted to point out, I know this looks like wine because I put it in a fancy glass, but it's actually Coke Zero because I needed a pickup at this time. It's almost 1:00 a.m. here, so I wish. Right, questions. Quincy, is the town called Amalfi, or is it just Amalfi Coast? Well, I think it was clear, Amalfi Coast and the town of Amalfi, so both. Who is the singer of the music now? Maybe we can type answer. Peppino di Capri. Maybe Mara can leave it there for a second so that they can see the answer. Mishko, I hope I'm reading your name right. What is your best town? To visit? In Italy, in general? I don't know. I live in Rome. Come to Rome. It's beautiful. It's very touristic. It's very run down, but it has the Colosseum. So it is worth the trip, really. MJ, how many days do you need to make this whole trip from the time you start in Italy? Well, look, I usually do what I did today with you guys, minus the Gragnano part, because that's not included. The Gragnano is not included in touristic tours, but the rest, so Pompeii, Capri, Sorrento, and the Amalfi Coast, 4 days. It's done in a rush in 4 days. So if you have a whole week, that'd be best. I would say a week. Erin, how are the diner countertops still in such good color? Oh, really good question, Erin. The thing is, they are not painted. They are colored stone. They're colored marble. So marble withstands anything, really. Only deflagration, probably not. So that's why it is multicolored and still in such mint conditions. What was the population of Pompeii? Kiv, 20,000, roughly. Carmel, how did they know they were brothels? If you remember the decoration that I showed you, that I told you was a painting on the wall showing the services offered to the clients, that was the most PG-13 one. Let's put it this way. It was very, very obvious looking at all the decorations that was a brothel. What did they use for money in Pompeii? Coins. As well as in Rome and in the whole empire, they had coinage, so they minted coins. And actually coins are a very good device for us when we find them to realize when something happened, or at least before which date. Because coins were minted, new types of coins were minted constantly. If anything of importance happened, it would be put on a coin. So nowadays, they've realized the eruption of Mount Vesuvius didn't happen in August, as people thought for decades, until like 2 weeks ago. Now they found a coin that has the image of something that the emperor of the time did that couldn't have happened in August. It happened later on. So they postponed the date of when the eruption happened at least to after what that action by the emperor, because it was already on the coins. So coins. Kiev again, is this architecture original or has it been restored? Thank you. It's original. Some parts have been restored, mainly to keep it standing if it was in danger of coming down, of falling, but it's original. Mishko, does someone still live in Pompeii? Okay, so there is a modern city of Pompeii, which is another, it's like close to, next to the ancient city, but in the ancient city, no, that is only an archaeological site. It's like a museum, an open air museum. Sally, can visitors still walk through there, or is it now closed down for excavations? Open. It's the parts that they are still excavating that will be roped off and you cannot visit, but everything else open. Ria, what year or era are these homes from? You're right, I didn't say. Everything that we saw in Pompeii was built between 5 centuries before Christ, so 500 years before Christ, and the year 79 after Christ, when it all stopped in that instant. Kiv, are paintings restored, and what paint did they use that survived 2,000 years? The paintings are not restored, and they are in such good conditions because they are frescoes. Fresco is a painting technique. It's a technique of painting on wall. It's what Michelangelo used in the Sistine Chapel. That's why it's so good after 500 years. You paint, fresco in Italian means fresh. So you paint while the plaster, the white plaster on the wall is still fresh. And once it dries up, it kind of drinks the colors in. So the colors are now on the dry wall. They are part of the wall. They're not a layer of color on the wall. So they will never go away. They will never fade. Barry, can you please review why the Villa of Mysteries is given its name? Yes. So mysteric or mysterious cults are religions like the cult of god Dionysus, where only the priests and the inner circle can know what the religion is about. This is a very simplified explanation, but it is a mystery to all the adepts of the cult, but for the very inner circle. And because the paintings on the walls of that villa were showing us rituals of that cult, of the cult of Dionysus, it was called the Villa of the Mysteries. I hope this is a clear answer. Mary, were all of the rooms with the artwork on the walls full of ash and dirt, or were some of them spared? They look amazing. They do look amazing. And no, they were not spared. No, all of it was completely covered by a very thick 1.5 mile of ashes and pumice stone and debris that came from the eruption. Mary, when was the Antiquarium built? At the end of the 1800s, and then it was also, retouched. So at the beginning of the 1900s. Elizabeth, I was told that the amphoras near the kitchen/outdoor oven areas were filled with honey, and when they were opened several years ago, the honey was still edible. Is this true? I don't know about the honey, honestly, but it's true that they found amounts of food or drinks or substances, kitchen cooking substances within the jars that had been sealed at the time of the eruption. So wine, honey, very, very possibly true. I just don't know about this specific instance. That it was still good, I doubt it very much. Honey being a sugary substance is a preservative, but I doubt it sustains 2,000 years under the ash. Patricia, why would you go to the Antiquarium at the end of your visit rather than the beginning? You're right. I think it's probably a very personal choice. It is something that welcomes you when you enter the site, being the visitor center, and you might want to look at the virtual aids that they have there before so that you can imagine the things that you are then seeing for yourselves inside. I would do it afterwards, but again, it's just a personal preference. There's no specific reason why I suggested it. Monique, where would you stay close to Pompeii? Not in modern Pompeii. Modern Pompeii, unfortunately, it's a very ugly modern city. I would stay on the coast. Sorrento would be a good spot. It's a very short drive away to the ruins of Pompeii, and it's a very lovely town. Otherwise, we didn't have the time tonight, and it's a big shame, but Naples is one of the most beautiful cities in Italy. Oh, this would be my answer to the first question. Your best town? Naples. Naples is way, way too underestimated. It's not as dangerous as its fame leads you to think. And it's one of the most beautiful places you will see on earth, believe me. Karen, how long a drive from Pompeii to Sorrento? Look, there is a tunnel that you have to go through that on rush hour, it's crazy. But if there's no traffic, it's a 20-minute drive, very, very close. Kathleen, is there a specific type of pasta that is most famous? You mean the shape? The ones that I showed you. I would say spaghetti and penne are both at first place. I think they're a tie. Karen, is there a good restaurant in Gragnano to eat their pasta? That's a very good question. But you see, the majority of the pasta that is produced in Gragnano gets shipped to other places. They make up for 14% of all Italian exports yearly. So I wouldn't choose a restaurant in Gragnano to eat the pasta. Of course, they serve pasta that they make, but there's nothing particularly famous. Joanne, what kind of sauce do you recommend with each of the 4 types of pasta? I like it. I gave you a hint and now you're following it. For the 4 types. All right, so I had put in a slide that then I erased because a friend of mine said, don't be so harsh. And she didn't agree, but we don't do spaghetti with meat sauce. Spaghetti bolognese is not something, it's sacrilege. We don't do it. Bolognese sauce, it's born in the city of Bologna and it goes with the type of pasta that was born in Bologna, and that is tagliatelle. I didn't show you the tagliatelle. It's another type of pasta altogether. It's made with eggs in the dough and it's fresh. It's not dried up as the ones that we saw. For the ones that we saw, spaghetti, the best way of enjoying your spaghetti is with a very simple fresh tomato sauce with basil leaves, all fresh, garlic, olive oil, fantastic. A little spicy if you like it, I like a kick. The penne are good with either tomato sauce or a more creamy. You know, when the pasta has stripes on it, the stripes are there for a reason. It's not random. It's because they make the pasta rougher on the surface and they retain the sauce better. So the stripes are there to kind of grip the sauce and make it smoother, you know, in the process of turning it with the pasta. So penne with a saucy sauce, if it makes sense, with a creamy one. The shells filled prosciutto, peas, and cream, for instance, or a meat sauce, and then baked with a lot of Parmesan on it. And then what was there? The maccheroni, like the penne, the little maccheroni type, like penne. Amrita, sorry. How would you recommend to learn Italy? And I'm guessing you mean Italian. Come to live here. If you come to live here for 3 months, you will know it. No one speaks English in Italy, or very few people do. So you would have to learn Italian and it would be fun, I think. No, but jokes apart, watch movies, not dubbed. Watch Italian movies with subtitles, maybe movies that you've watched already so you know what the plot is about and you can follow it. And if you're at a good level, you can start reading books. Children's books like Harry Potter, perfect. It's a very simple book written for kids. You can learn Italian that way. Eileen, if I were interested in physically taking this tour, seeing Pompeii for 3-4 days as suggested, and seeing each area in a leisurely manner, what would be the recommended time to plan in total? 3-4 days in Pompeii, plus in a leisurely manner the rest, I would say 10 days to 2 weeks. Charla, what is the best time of year to visit? Okay, so this applies to every place in Italy, even though in the south the climate is way milder than in the north. But for any place, if you can, I know not everybody can, I'm not being unrealistic, but if you can, if you have the chance, the spring until the end of May, or the fall, mid-September to the end of October. That's the best time to come. Nothing in between. And of course, in the winter, the climate is not so gorgeous. You risk finding rainy days. But in the summer, it's not a good time. It's not the best time because it's so full of people, other than this past year, unfortunately. Kathleen, are Sorrento lemons sweet or sour? So they are lemony, so they are tangy, but the particularity of this lemon is that in their zest, they have a lot of essential oil. And that is what they use to make the limoncello. They just use the zest No lemon is squeezed to make limoncello. That's for the slushy. You peel the zest, only the yellow parts, not the white peel inside that is very sour. And then you just infuse it in pure alcohol. And you leave it there for 3 or 4 days. The essential oil is what gives it the color and also how cloudy it becomes. And then you just add simple syrup. Now, every family has its own recipe. And of course, this is one of those things where my grandma's recipe is better than your grandma's and anybody else's grandma's recipe. But so it's the syrup proportions, water with sugar, that varies. But the peels in the alcohol, that's the base of it. Carol, how old can the lemon trees go to? That's a very good question that I don't know the answer to. They are not too old. I mean, don't think olive trees. Olive trees they grow to be 1,000 years old and they still produce olives and they look like they're babies. The lemon trees don't grow that old, but I don't know the specific amount of years. Sorry. Sherry, limoncello is served very cold. Yes, super chilled. And even the glasses, if they're glass, because sometimes they will serve you the glasses, the painted ceramic glasses in the Amalfi Coast. But if the glass is a glass made out of glass, they will chill the glass. So they just wet it. They wet the inside with water and they put it in the freezer. And then when they serve the limoncello, they take it out at the moment. Kathy, what is the greenery in the limoncello? In that photo I showed you, that's something that you actually never see. I think they did it for the purpose of the photo, just for aesthetics. It was a sprig of thyme, but we don't put thyme in our limoncello. It's not accurate for the taste. Tony, can I visit with my power wheelchair that folds up and goes in a taxi? Absolutely. There will be, unfortunately, Tony, there will be places that are not ready for a wheelchair. Okay, so especially in, I want to say remote places, not because they're rural, but because they're not big cities like Rome or Florence or Venice, used to having people from all over the world. So you might come across a spot where it is difficult for you to move comfortably, but absolutely do. And if I can say one nice thing about Italians, me being Italian and all, we are very hospitable and we are proud of our country and we love showing you around and we like to help you if you need any assistance. So Italians are lovely people. Shireen, what are some of the affordable hotels in Capri? None. No. If you want to sleep on the island, so I didn't say this, but the ferry ride from Sorrento is 20 minutes. It lasts 20 minutes. And from Naples, it's 45 to an hour. So it's very doable to sleep on the mainland and then go to Capri for a one-day visit. But if you want to sleep on the island, my suggestion would be look up either small pensions or small hotels or Airbnbs, maybe privately owned homes. Even on booking.com, they have those nowadays, in Anacapri, in the other town, the one where the locals live, because that's going to be the less touristic place and it's going to be the less expensive place. In the town of Capri, they feel so glamorous. Barbara, can you name any famous movies that were filmed in any of these locations? Yes. Lots of them are Italian movies though, so I don't even know that if there's an English title, but we had Ulysses with Kirk Douglas, shot in 1953. We had, and I'm not going in order, of course, but we had a lot of films by an Italian director, Rossellini. Rossellini was the husband to Ingrid Bergman, the second husband. So he had a house here and he was very fond of the coast and he filmed a lot of movies here. In 1954, I think 1954, Beat the Devil was shot in Ravello with Humphrey Bogart. So it was written by Truman Capote. It's a really nice movie. It's not all set in Ravello, but the beginning and the end are in Ravello. The rest is in Africa. Then we had Mr. and Mrs. Smith that I mentioned in the presentation, Avanti Avanti with Jack Lemmon. And coming up, Gore with next year. So I'm giving you, a preview. I can't come up with any others. I can't think of any others. Rhonda, has Via Krupp reopened to the public? It is open to the public. I didn't explain myself well enough. it just sometimes it happens, and it's impossible to predict when, but it happens that if they have a falling of rocks onto the street, they have to close it off for that day or for 2 days or for 3 days to clear it of the rubble. So now I think it's open. I didn't hear of any incidents. Julie, what is the most romantic venue or restaurant that you know of in Capri? That's a very good question. In Capri. So the hotel that we talked about, the Quisisana, has 2 restaurants. One is a champagne bar, of course, and the other is a restaurant, and it's a very renowned, very good 1 Michelin star restaurant. The setting is also fantastic. But my suggestion, if you're really set on booking ahead before being there, then maybe go with the famous ones like the hotel that we talked about. If you're not set on that and you can decide to come, give a look, and then decide, then that would be the best way of finding, you know, a little corner, a secret garden, a nice terrace that you just don't know about, but that you see while you're walking in the street, and it inspires you, and you look inside and you see it's a restaurant. Wow, I was just looking for the spot. Cheryl, I'm hearing impaired / deaf. Any suggestions that would make travel less stressful? It's the one thing that keeps me from traveling out of the country. Well, it is a very delicate matter, and I totally understand why you feel this way. I would say, you know, a vacation in Italy, it's not something extreme from the physical point of view. You're not going to remote places where you are in danger of getting lost or being left alone or getting isolated and not finding your way back. You would be in the center of towns with lots of people around you, with lots of signs everywhere. And even if a lot of Italians don't speak English, that's true, in very touristic places, and especially in hotels, they do, because they're used to, of course, having to communicate with the tourists. And even if you find someone who doesn't speak English, they will be very willing to help you. So again, I see the problem, and I'm not avoiding to consider it. It's there, but I don't think it's something that should prevent you from experiencing the experience. Anusha, I hope I pronounced it right. Is it better to travel from Sorrento to Ravello or other way? Which way can you have better views? So it depends if you're driving or if you're in the passenger seat. And it depends also on how adventurous and how much courage you have. Because, and one of the links that I included is an actual drive on one of the public buses that do the route all day long, up and down. And it's from the point of view of one of the passenger on the shore side, on the seaside. So watch that, and then you decide which way to go. If you go from Sorrento to Ravello, you have the sea on your right and the cliff and the mountain on your left-hand side. So if you're the driver, all good, other than you're driving. If you're the passenger, well, you've got that drop right there, you know, especially during curves. On the other way around, your car is on the lane that is closer to the mountain. So you're a little more protected. A little less view maybe also. I hope I answered. Corrado, what would a tour like this cost, Elena? Corrado, it depends. It always, I'm sorry, but the most answers is depends. It depends if you do it alone, if you do it in a group, if you do it with a tour operator that organizes everything and manages everything, if you do it on your own. Personally, and I know it's ironic because I am a tour director and I lead tour groups. Personally, when I travel alone. It's not a suggestion. It's just, you know, my preferred way of traveling. I like to read up a lot of things about the place that I'm going to visit and learn what there is to see and choose for myself and design my whole, you know, tailored trip. But a lot of people prefer to have the carefree experience of having someone else design it for you and then lead it for you. Of course, this way with the group, it costs a little bit less because you're in a group. So usually there's a package with low airfares and lower hotel fares, but you are paying also for the person organizing everything and for the person leading every activity. So There's not much difference in cost, but there is a difference in the experience. It's not going to be cheap. Even just for airfares, traveling from the US or from, I saw there's many people in Australia right now following, or New Zealand. So that's going to be a big part of the cost. Patty, does the Italian government welcome people relocating to Anacapri or Capri? Oh, you mean you would like to move there, for instance, and if the government would accept you and be welcoming? Yes. Yes, we are not a country that is that we're not known for having one of the strictest policies in immigration. So refugees are something else, guys. So yes, it wouldn't be too much of a difficult process. Think green card for you in the US and take it down 100 notches, and there you have it. Barry, how do you spell Gore Vidal? Exactly as you wrote it. What is the name of the movie coming out? So you spelled it perfectly, and the movie, it's just the name. So Gore, Gore. That's the name of the movie. Mary, why wasn't the Blue Grotto featured in Capri? You're right, because I had to choose, Mary, unfortunately. Mary is right. She's referencing to one of the many, actually, caves and grottos that open up in the cliffs, at the base of the cliffs around the island of Capri. One of the things that you can do when you visit is when you arrive with the ferry at the port, at the big harbor, you can hop on a smaller boat and a dinghy basically, and take a boat tour around the island. And so you can see all the cliffs of the island. The Blue Grotto is the most famous one of the grottos, and it's called Blue Grotto because of the color that the stone that the walls in the cave take on from the reflection of the sea. But let me tell you, first of all, it's very difficult to get into the Blue Grotto because it's very touristic, but they only allowed an amount of people. You have to enter with very small boats. So from the dinghy that you're on, you have to pass onto a smaller boat. And then very often it is closed because of how low the entrance to the cave is. If the level of the sea that day, if the tide is high, you won't have any space to go in even with the smaller boat. So it's very expensive. It's very difficult to go in. Very often it is closed. And let me tell you, it's not worth it. The other caves that have no entrance fees, not all this hustle, you can just go with the dinghy and see them, are beautiful just as well. And there are other caves and grottos along the Amalfi Coast that I haven't mentioned. And there are so many hundreds of things that I haven't mentioned. I definitely didn't presume this to be a comprehensive virtual tour of the area. I had to choose because you saw already it was an hour and a half long, I think. Lisa, is it possible to spend several days walking from town to town on a trail or safe roads along the Amalfi Coast, similar to the walk along the Cinque Terre? Absolutely. So the peninsula, the tongue that is the peninsula, has on the upper part Sorrento, and on the lower part the Amalfi Coast. In the middle, like a spine, is a chain of mountains called Lattari, Lattari, that are filled with trails. You can hike a lot, and there is one specifically that is called, oh God, it's difficult to, Sentiero degli Dei. It's the pathway of the gods in Italian, and it's beautiful, very scenic, very easy hike, I would say. So absolutely, you can spend days just wandering through the mountains in the peninsula. Lorraine, are the Pliny letters available to purchase? The originals, of course not, but there are, of course, publications of his works. So if you look online, Pliny the Younger, you will find on many websites of course, it's a translation, yeah, in English, because he wrote in Latin, but you will find the translation of his letters. You can find the Latin text, the original, and you can also find books where they are reported, where they are transcripted. So yes, and I'm sorry, but this is Kismet. I just looked down on my pen. Gore. What is the best pasta for la matriciana sauce? Ah, I like this question. Two types. One is bucatini. Now, bucatini is a big spaghetti with a hole in the middle. So if you cut it in a section, it's like a very small ring, a very tight ring. So it's a long type of pasta. That is the typical shape for a matriciana sauce. For everybody else listening, a matriciana is a red tomato sauce that comes from the region where Rome is. Amatrice is a town, very famous for the big earthquake that hit it a couple years back. And they produce a very famous type of bacon, the guanciale. It comes from the guancia, the cheek of the pork. And that is the bacon that you put in this type of sauce. So bucatini would be the pasta of choice. Monica, what was the name of the book? The Story of San Michele. F. Bardwell. With a surname Salerno. Does that mean your family's from Salerno? It might have been. You're right. It wouldn't be too crazy to think that way, but it's not. Not in my case. Liz, what is the one word to describe Positano as Amalfi historical, Ravello intellectual, Positano glamorous? But that is me. That was my calling them these names. It's not an official thing. Robin, more movies with great scenery. Under the Tuscan Sun. Oh, I love that movie. Positano and A Good Woman, Amalfi. Absolutely, A Good Woman. I remember that movie. I was a kid. Ellen, are there boat tours of the Amalfi Coast and or boat tours of the southwest coast of Italy? So definitely boat tours of the Amalfi Coast. All year round, you've got ferries departing from either Sorrento or Salerno, like my family name. In the summer, these ferries, these boats, they also make every stop along the Amalfi Coast. So it's a public ferry, but if you get on it, you make all the stops. You can just stay on the boat and you do the whole Amalfi Coast. So of course, you can also do it with a private boat if you want to rent out a private boat, but it's going to be way more expensive. Regarding the southwest part of Italy, that would be a cruise. It's a long stretch of coast. You've got Sicily right there to go around. So either you have a private sailboat, and that's fantastic to do, or you do it via land. Erin, what is the cheapest way to do a boat tour around Amalfi? Can I find a local fisherman, not a tour guide or business, who would be so kind as to take us out for a couple hours? You might, but to do so, it would have to be very momentous. You would just have to go there. I wouldn't have, a name to give you. You would have to go there, and by just talking to people, meeting this fisherman and asking, and he would have to say yes. And so lots of ifs, and if they all line up, then it could happen. Yes. Viv, it's not something touristic though. Yeah, it's not structured. Viv, if you had a week, where would you stay? If you mean in the area that we toured together, again, even if it's outside the area that we toured together, I would mention Naples for sure. And it's a good base, to do the Gulf of Naples. So all the way down to Pompeii, if you want to visit the national park where the Vesuvius is. And then Sorrento is a good base. And to visit the towns that we mentioned. And let me tell you, if you rent a private car, I know it's scary to drive along the Amalfi Drive, but do it. No one has ever died. I did it. And if I did it, you can do it. You have to rent the smallest car you can get. You don't want an SUV. You don't want a Volvo. You want a tiny, small Italian-made car. And you just zoom along the coast and you just stop wherever you feel like stopping. We've seen 3 towns, but there's plenty more. Smaller, maybe. Less famous maybe, but there's plenty more towns. And the Amalfi Coast, it doesn't end where we stopped in Ravello. It goes on for another couple of miles. So you also have some more towns further on if you keep driving. And it's a beautiful holiday. With COVID, how will that affect tours? The question of all questions this year, right, Mara? We are dying to know. We don't know. Unfortunately, there's no right or wrong answer. It's very difficult to predict. We think things might change in the sense that, you know, we will all be way more cautious and way more conscious of how many times we wash our hands and for how many seconds we stay with the soaps on our hands and if we wear the mask or not and all of that. But we don't know when it's going to come back. It depends on so many factors. Claire, we hope the sooner the better. We hope really soon. Claire, what would be the best area to use as a home base and see all of South Italy, the most convenient and affordable? Okay, so I don't want to sound condescending or patronizing. Please excuse me if I do. The south of Italy is really, really, really big. You know how Italy has the shape of a boot? We were on a tiny, tiny spot in the middle of the boot, but then you've got the whole point of the boot, which is another region. You've got Sicily, the island down there. You've got the heel of the boot, which is Puglia. It's a really, really vast area to cover in one holiday. And especially you couldn't do it just having one base. You would have to move your base along with you while you move to see newer locations. So when I do this on tour, I do it, for instance, with an Australian tour operator, and we start in Rome and then we move down to Sorrento, which we use as a base to see everything that we did together tonight. And then from there we move to Puglia, the heel of the Italian peninsula, and we choose a town there and we make it our base to tour Puglia, and then we move to Sicily and so on and so on. So you want to choose different spots. Vicky, are people concerned about an eruption and how would you escape today? Really good question. I didn't tap into that. Yes, volcanologists and experts are very much worried about an eruption because the volcano is not dead. It's what they call dormant. So it's just sleeping. It's just taking a nap. But it will erupt at some point. There is a whole chamber full of magma and lava underneath the cap, and it's just going to go off at some point. And it's been a while. Remember, 76 years since the last explosion. So it will happen. There are some signs that predict, that foretell that it's going to happen in the days before an eruption. You start feeling the earth shaking. You've got earthquakes. You've got some of the puddles of water, some of the ponds along the sides of the mountains, they start boiling because the temperature rises underground. So these signs are all very, very closely monitored. Vesuvius has 1 million cameras on it, 1 million eyes watching it every day, all day long, all night long. But it is a very high risk area, especially because the town of Naples and a couple other towns that are spread at its feet, they stretched and they started climbing, they started building houses on the slopes of Mount Vesuvius. Imagine those people, they're the first ones to go. So the Italian government devised an emergency plan that has the region divided into, the inhabited region, divided into areas. The area right underneath the volcano, the closer one, all the way to the shore where Naples is, that is called the red area. As soon as they hear sounds of, or they see the signs of an eruption that's going to happen, they evacuate that area right away, and they have deals in place with other regions to take in the people, because it's a very highly densely populated area. So these people, they have to leave their homes and they have to be, you know, guests in another region for a while. Claudia, are there any types of villas in Amalfi similar to Tuscany that you could suggest for larger families? Yes, there are. Of course, the countryside, the landscape is very different. You know, Tuscany has these very sweet hills, so also lots of space in horizontal. Amalfi and the coast is way more vertical and tight between the sea and the mountain. But you do have villas that you can rent out. You can rent out the whole villa. It's probably not going to have a big park around it or a big swimming pool around it, but it will have terraces with lovely views. You can have your breakfast on the terrace overlooking the water, and it's going to be fantastic. Heather, do the painted domes demonstrate Moorish influence? Not so much the domes. The domes are done with tiles, colored tiles, and it's the tiles that are hand painted, and then they get cooked in the oven. So they're terracotta tiles that become ceramic by getting, cooked in an oven. The Moorish influences that I was mentioning, I was referring to the cathedral in Amalfi, that church in the black and white striped pattern that we saw in the slides. That has Moorish influences. Marcy, which is your least favorite area of Italy and why? This almost gets political. No, I'm kidding. I would say that, look, I live in Rome, as I mentioned before. I'm not from Rome. I live in Rome and I love the job there because, come on, I'm a local guide. I get to be in the Colosseum every day. I get to be in the Sistine Chapel every day. It's a treasure trove. You can never stop learning new things about Rome. So from that point of view, it's a fantastic place. And I do suggest you visit it because it is worth visiting. Having said this, living in Rome, it's a nightmare. And I don't want to curse, so let's leave it at that. Just an FYI, Angela, just an FYI, they just opened a new museum of Vesuvian remnants and excavations in Positano, which we viewed in 2018. A must-see. Angela, I didn't know about this. Thank you. I have to write it down. I haven't been yet. In Positano, you said. Okay. Vicky, who has the best gelato? This is also a big competition. There is an actual award. The best gelato in the world, and it gets won every year since I think 7 or 8 years ago. Maybe this skipped 1 or 2 years, but 7 or 8 years almost in a row, by a place in Tuscany. So in another region closer to Florence, so north of where we've been tonight virtually. The town, I will spell it out for you guys, so ready with your pens or your devices. The town is called San Gimignano, S-A-N, and then another word, Gimigno, San Gimignano. And it has this ice cream parlor on the main square. You can't miss it. It has the sign everywhere that they've won the best gelato in the world, and it's really good. And since San Gimignano is a place where they have 2 local products, saffron and a really good white wine, they have both flavors in gelato in this place. So you try either the saffron or the white wine, San Gimignano white gelato, or both together. Carolyn, is it safe to ride a bicycle along the Amalfi Road? No. Like a bicycle, not a motor bicycle? No. Don't cycle on the Amalfi Coast Drive. Absolutely not. No. Patricia, so the people killed in Pompeii, I always thought their bodies were preserved. But did I understand you that only their skeletons were preserved and the bodies were filled in with substance? You did understand. So we're left with the bones. The bones remained, and that's okay. What happened is, imagine if I die during an eruption, that covers the place where I am in tons of layers of ashes and pumice stones and pebbles and rocks and debris. What happens is, my body is there and it occupies a space, within the layers. The layers around me, the ash and all the material from the eruption, they become hard in time. They harden, they become hard as a rock, okay? And then, so in order, first the debris becomes rocky around me, and then my flesh decomposes. So of me, only the bones remains. But what happens? My flesh left that impression. The space that I was occupying as a whole body is now left empty within that cast of hardened debris. So the archaeologists found this, and they inject in this bubble the material, the lime and the plaster. It gets hardened, and then they break the shell around it of ash and pumice and debris. And they are left with the exact cast of the impression that my body left before decomposing in the material. I hope I made myself clear. It's not easy to explain. So, but what we saw, the casts, it's not a person. There's no bones in that. The bones, of course, were taken away to be studied and to be kept in museums. That's just plaster. Raji, what are the most popular or best museums? In Italy, in the area that we visited, I would, again, not shown you in the slides, but in Naples, I mentioned that the National Archaeological Museum in Naples has a lot of the treasures that have been found within the ruins of the city of Pompeii. So and many more things other than what comes from Pompeii. So I suggest if you are into archaeological remains, archaeological ruins, I do suggest you visit it. It's very, very rich and big. Other than that, Naples has lots of museums. Naples has a fantastic fine arts museum called the Capo di Monte, Capodimonte, all one word. The Museum of Capo di Monte is one of the treasures in Italy. For real. It has Caravaggios, Raphaels. I mean, it's a fantastic collection. So Naples is a very, very rich city in art and history and archaeology. Trisha, while visiting Amalfi, I noticed that there were little alcoves within the rock with little buildings or scenes. What does it represent? So those are what we call edicola, little niches that sometimes they are a bit above the street level on a corner. Sometimes they are at street level. And sometimes inside there's a scene, as she said, or there's a little Madonna, the statue of a little Madonna with flowers. Sometimes there is an everlasting candle. So those edicolas started as at crossings where travelers were passing very frequently and traffic was heavy and there could be accidents or there were just a lot of pilgrims along the road. The Madonna or the saint that has the statue there, it's like he's looking over you, she's looking over you, and she's keeping you safe. So that's what they are, votive decorations. Kate, honey is, oh no, she's not calling me honey, she's talking about honey. Honey is the only substance that never rots. Fact. Thanks for a fantastic tour. Thank you, Kate. Thanks, I didn't know that. Bindi, are there any vegetarian place to eat at? Absolutely, yes. We've got fantastic veggies, fantastic salads. We didn't talk about buffalo mozzarella because otherwise Mara would have kicked me from there. But we have lots of alternatives. Vegan, a little more difficult, but vegetarian, absolutely yes. Kiki, what is the best way to cook or eat orzo pasta? Same way as any other pasta. You boil it. You want to wait for the water to boil, and then you put some salt, coarse salt in the water. And then once the water boils again, because the salt will let it simmer down, you put the pasta. You want to drain it before it's cooked, guys. It's called al dente. That's what it means. It has to retain a little bit of its toughness. It doesn't have to be all mushy. So that's when you drain it. And especially if you have a sauce like a tomato sauce, you want to cook the pasta in the pan with the sauce. So it drinks a little bit of the sauce in the dough. Fantastic. Trisha, sfogliatelle is my favorite dessert. Was it created in Naples? Yes. Sfogliatelle, for anyone who doesn't know them, is a dessert, is a pastry. You see it everywhere in this region. They were created in the city of Naples, but you find them also in pastry shops all along the coast. And it's a fan-shaped little pastry that has a very flaky dough, that it's a bit crunchy, and it's filled with either custard or fresh ricotta cheese. The original one is with fresh ricotta cheese, so yum, like cannoli that has ricotta in it. And Elena, your English is of a very high standard. Thank you. Where did you learn it? I learned it here, exactly where you see me. I'm at my parents' place right now, and I learned it when I was 5 because my mom was smart enough to think that I would use it. I would have a use for it in my life, and so she was working, and my dad was working too. So instead of just hiring any babysitter, she hired an au pair from London who lived with us for 3 years. So when I was 5, I spoke like the queen. Mara can testify to that. When we were on tour the first time and we went from Europe, We had been in Europe for like 2 weeks already together, and we spoke all day long. And then we hopped to London. And as soon as we arrived in London, I started talking like the Queen, and she couldn't understand who I was anymore. She looked at me with big eyes, didn't she, Mara? Breezy. Can you please suggest me places where they teach you how to make cheese and chocolate? I actually can. I can, but I have to write them down. Mara, I will write them to you by email. You can include it in the email, yeah. Just know that the two places are not in the region that we saw today together. They are in the north of Italy. Susan, what do you think of Giardini Naxos? So Giardini Naxos that Susan is asking about is a coastal town in Sicily, and they are very close to the town of Taormina. Taormina is very, very famous for a very ancient Greek theater that is still there. Giardini Naxos is a resort. This is to answer the question. Giardini Naxos is very convenient to use it as a base. Again, because of the vicinity with Taormina and with other spots that you can reach from Giardini Naxos. As for the town itself, it's a resort town. So when you arrive with the ferry from mainland Italy, it's very close to where you arrive, and you have probably driven a long way to get all the way to where you get the ferry. So it's convenient to stop there, but it's horrible. I mean, it's one hotel after the other along the sea. There's way better places in Sicily. Maria, what is the best beach in Amalfi Coast to spend like a day? So this is the place that we didn't see together, but way before Positano, when you start driving from the tip of the peninsula, coming from Sorrento along Amalfi Coast, right down there, right at the bottom of that first cliff, is a fantastic little fraction of a town that has also a beach. So if you look it up on Google Maps, it will be way clearer than what I'm being able to right now. How long have you been a tour director, Elena? I've started 7 years now. 7 years. But this year, does this year count? I don't think it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Mara is saying no. Anonymous. I have been told by Italian friends who live in northern Italy that it may be more risky for Americans to visit southern Italy without a local travel guide or tour. More pickpockets, maybe? I wasn't clear why. Do you agree that tourists need to be on higher alert in southern Italy, or not really? Okay, so I will be very unpopular with my colleagues if they hear me say this, but my personal and only individual opinion is that the person who told you this, he or she might have been a tour guide and she wanted some business with you. Because no, if you go in a very big touristic city like Paris, Madrid, Barcelona, London, Dublin, Rome, Vienna, Berlin, you will have pickpockets everywhere in the touristic spots. So you risk more of having your wallet stolen from the back pocket of your jeans under the Eiffel Tower, smack in the center of Paris, than you have in Naples. Having said this, which is true for the whole world, you know, tourists are wads of cash with legs everywhere you go in the world. This is true. And locals, especially if you go in places that, you know, are suffering from poverty, they know this. They know you're loaded because you are going to spend money on your holiday and you have it on you. So you are a target. It is impossible not to look like a tourist. Every one of us looks like a tourist. You can be spotted miles away from locals, so don't even go into that. Yes, be careful. Don't put your passport in your back pocket or your jeans and forget about it. Put it in front of you. If you climb into a subway train in a big city and you have a backpack, just roll it around and put it in front of you and just keep your hands on it. There's no shame in this. This is things that, you know, wise travelers, people who are well traveled, do all the time. You do want to be careful in crowds in general, but the south of Italy is totally safe. Believe you me. Lolimar. Thanks, Elena. Wonderful. What is the name of the restaurant at the end of the presentation? So spelling, it's called Torre Normanna. Spelling is 2 words, Torre, like tower, and the second word is Normanna, Torre Normanna, the Norman Tower. Are there handrail on the vertical stairs? The Phoenician stairway? Nope. What is the speed limit on the SS 163 along the Amalfi Coast? 50 kilometers per hour, which I think it's 30 miles per hour. So it's like a city limit. In our cities, that's the limit. Do you have a virtual trip of Cinque Terre planned, Lake Como area? Nope and nope for now, or maybe yes, maybe we do. Yes, we do. Andrew, we will. When I last visited Sorrento, the train towards Naples was useful to get to Pompeii and also Herculaneum, which is well worth a visit. Would you recommend the train for tourists? So Andrew is talking about a train line that is called Circumvesuviana. It circumnavigates the Vesuvius and it connects all the towns that are around it, including Naples and Pompeii, and the gorgeous, absolutely worth visiting archaeological site of the city of Herculaneum, which is like another Pompeii that, again, I couldn't mention for time limits. And yes, the train would be a very easy and cheap and speedy way of moving around. Only know that we are in the south of Italy, so even if it's safe to travel around, it's very chaotic. So the train goes in 2 directions, of course, yeah? There's nowhere on the platform that tells you which direction the train that is approaching goes into. So you don't know if you're going towards Naples or Pompeii. You know, you just follow the other tourists or you ask someone and you just, you think fast on your feet and you're good to go. Rhonda. Just wanted to say that I spent 3 weeks on Capri, living in Casa Malaparte. Wow, Capri is my favorite place on earth. Thank you for a great lecture. Thank you, Rhonda. I'm glad you liked it. Liz, by ferry, how much time from Sorrento to Ravello if you just stay on board? Even if you don't hop off and on, the ferry does make all the stops. So it's going to be a while. I don't know the exact time, but it's going to be a while from Sorrento because you have to go all the way to the tip of the peninsula from Sorrento and then all the lower part, and Ravello is kind of towards the end of the Amalfi Coast. Is there a ferry Amalfi to Sicily? Yes, it's called a cruise ship. No, not from Amalfi though. I was joking. Amalfi is a very, very small harbor and it only serves local ferry lines. If you want to go by boat, by water, from the region that we visited all the way to Sicily, you have to go to Naples, which is a huge harbor. And from there, you get on a bigger boat that takes you to Sicily. Absolutely. Angela. Are you familiar? And sorry, Naples to Sicily, you don't have a night in between. It's kind of it's not a cruise. I was really joking. Angela, are you familiar with the hotel/restaurant in San Pietro? I wish I was. I know what it is. I know of the Hotel San Pietro. I've never been. So the hotel Angela is mentioning is one of the 2 5+ stars luxury, super exclusive, super famous hotels in Positano. The San Pietro is one of the 2. On the side of the sea, and then the other one within the town is Le Sirenuse. They contend the best hotel in the place for the best hotel in Positano. Super exclusive, super expensive, private beach, the San Pietro. The Russians like it, apparently. Vicky, where in Naples is the best restaurants? So if you want to go for pizza, I'm assuming you want to go for pizza. If you want to go for pizza, then the area in Naples, and I'm going to spell it for you guys, it's called Chiaia, Chiaia. Again, because I know it sounded wrong, but it's true. Chiaia, Chiaia. So that is a neighborhood, a part of the downtown in Naples. And that is a very narrow streets. Naples, it's very chaotic, even in its layout. But that is the place where the most famous pizza places will be. And it's really good pizza. So it is a bit touristic, but it's safe and the pizza is really good. Andrea, I missed the beginning. Did you cover the Easter processions? I stayed in Sorrento to see the processions, and it was the most magical experience of my life. I'm not religious, but I cried watching the 3 a.m. white parade. Highly recommended. Andrea, you're so right. And I didn't mention them, so you know, you didn't miss them. I actually, originally, I thought of talking to you guys about what the religiosity of this people is in this region, because it's very peculiar. If any one of you lives in New York City, or if you visited New York City at that time of the year, exactly as the Irish have St. Patty's Day, the immigrants coming from this region in Italy, so not just the Italians, but the ones coming from close to Naples, they have the San Gennaro week. It's a week long in New York City. Imagine what it is back home. They do parades, as Andrea was saying, at 3 a.m. They wake up to go to take the Madonna along the streets of the town, all dressed in white. And they have nativity scenes that they keep on all year round. So it's a big part of their life. Yeah, and it's something to see. And during Easter, of course, it's big festivities. Jody. Is it true that dried pasta originally came into Sicily from the Arabs when they were there? Jody, yes, absolutely. Don't let anyone tell you that it's the Chinese who invented pasta. And I'm sorry for my good friend Lee June, but the Chinese have the noodles. Yes. Mixing flour with water and making a sort of dough that then you give a shape to, it has been done since Mesopotamia or even before that. So yes, the Chinese also in very ancient times had already the custom of eating the noodles. But the pasta with the durum wheat that we do today, that you dry up in the sun and then you cook the way we cook it, that is something that the Arabs brought to Sicily, because there was a big presence of them in Sicily. And then from there, it spread all over the rest of Italy. Joyce, which Australian tour operator do you work with? I work with Bunnick Tours. Sorry, Mara, I'm making a little bit of a commercial for the competition. Bunnick Tours. Dunia, Amalfi Coast. And then what's the city you compared to Intellect? And what's the other one before Amalfi Coast? Thanks. Okay, Dunia, so the city I compared to the intellectual one of the three was Ravello, Ravello, the last one that we've seen together. Before that was Amalfi, before that Positano, before that Capri, before that Sorrento. Alissa, my family and I are planning a trip to visit my cousin in Villa Magna and would like to visit these places. What's the best way to travel from there to the Amalfi Coast cities? I'm gonna Google Villa Magna while I answer. Oh no, my phone died. And while I'm gonna Google it anyways. After driving down from Rome, we continued all the way down the coast and around the tip to visit my friend's family hometown of Sersale. Wow, a wonderful 2 weeks. I drove all the way. In Napoli, be sure to go to Pizza Metro for dinner. Yes, thanks, Ken. So Ken is mentioning something that some establishments will offer. Pizza, you know, pizza a metro, pizza by the meter. So they will serve you at your table a whole square meter of pizza, and you can choose to have different toppings within that meter or have it all with one topping, and usually of course you share it with the other people at your table. But pizza al metro is something that happens in Italy sometimes. I'm just writing down Villa Magna so that I don't forget when my phone is charged. Marga, who has the best coffee? My home. No, I'm kidding. Who has the best coffee? People from Naples would say them. Coffee is very, very big in the region where Naples is. So it is a big tradition. The espresso coffee I'm talking about, if you go to Naples and you ask for an Americano coffee, they will laugh in your faces and then I don't know, shut the cafe. You have an espresso, you have it at the counter, you have it really hot, and it is already sugared. This is the original way of having coffee in Naples. So you don't have the sugar on the counter. They give you the cup, it's already sugared. You just chug it. Unlike the limoncello, and you burn both your tongue and your palate, and then you leave. That's it. Eileen, I have been to Positano. There is a bakery and restaurant there that has the best cannoli I have ever eaten. Do you happen to know the name of it? Do you know a tour guide in Rome named John Tinto? I'm sorry, no and no. I don't know about the bakery with the cannoli. And I believe you when you tell me that it's the best cannoli you've had, but you know cannoli doesn't come from there, right? It's originally from Sicily. So before you say that it's the best cannoli of your life, you should go to Sicily, try them in Sicily, and then compare the two. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the bakery that you refer to, and I don't know the colleague of mine that you mentioned, John, in Rome. Diane, Elena, would you do a private tour for 4 people in mid-October of this area? Diane, absolutely I would. I hope not this October. That starts in 2 days. I hope next year's October, but absolutely I would love to. Shadi, cooking class recommendation for teens. Shadi, I will give you a recommendation of cooking class for teens in Rome, because that's what I can think of off the top of my head. It is called, my phone is still dead. It is called Love Food. It is called Love Food. It has 4 locations downtown in Rome, so it's all very centrally located. It depends on how big the group of teens that you want to take to the cooking classes. Let me, as soon as my phone comes back, let me just check the spelling and the name for you, because it might be with a U instead of the 2 O's. Just let me check. Nancy, do you rinse your pasta before you add the sauce? Nope. We only rinse our pasta after you've boiled it and you've drained it of the boiling water, only if you want to make a cold pasta salad. Because I don't know if you knew this, but when you drain the pasta keeps on cooking. You have to add something cold to it to stop the cooking process. That's why you eat it right away. You cannot make it and then leave it on the counter with the sauce. It's going to keep on cooking and become all mushy. If you want to make a pasta salad, a cold pasta salad, that is something that we typically have in the summer, then you want to leave it there a bit because it has to become cold and you eat it maybe the day after. So to avoid it becoming mushy, to stop the cooking process, you rinse it under the tap with cold water, and that stops the cooking process. Pepper. I'm diabetic, so I'm afraid I won't find many things to eat without being a pain in the neck. Will restaurants be able to adjust meals? Pepper, absolutely. I mean, I thank you so much for the thought. Very, very considerate, but there's going to be no problem at all. It's going to be, it's going to be temptation after temptation after temptation, but you will for sure find things that you can eat carefree. Monica, I missed the tour. Is there a way I can view it on replay? This is for you, Mara, while I look up Villa Magna.
Yes, so I have been sending this, and I'll send it in a chat as well. But on my website, girltraveltours.com, there is a virtual tour drop-down menu, and I record all of the tours and I post them. I also have a YouTube channel, so if you'd like to follow the channel, you can see all of the past tours as well, but they're all on the website.
Okay. 3. So I looked up Villa Magna in the meanwhile, and Villa Magna is in the region where Florence is. Remember at the very beginning of my slideshow, I told you that Italy is divided into regions, yeah? And every region has a main city. So the region that we visited tonight has Naples as a main city. The 1 or 2 regions above that on the same coast is Tuscany. So Tuscany is not a city, it's the whole region. And within the region of Tuscany, Florence is the main city. So Villa Magna is close to Florence. So I think I remember the question was, can I visit these places from there? Yes, but it's going to be a very long drive. And in that case, I would suggest the high-speed train. You can take it from the station in Florence. It doesn't connect each and every one of the stations in Italy, just the big ones. So you can hop on the train in Florence. In 2 hours, 1 hour and a half, you're in Rome. And then you keep going with the train. You arrive in Naples in another hour and a half or 2. And then it also goes to Salerno. Remember the town with my family name? That is on the Gulf where the Amalfi Coast is. It's closer to the Amalfi Coast towns. That's what you should do if from Villa Magna, from Florence, you want to visit these places. Teresa, I love jewelry. Can you tell me where to shop for 18-karat gold from goldsmiths without an absorbent cost in Florence? Yes, not on the Ponte Vecchio, not on the bridge that the guides take you to and that has buildings on both sides. Those are all jewelry places, but the prices are way too high. They're all touristic prices. You want to go to the square, and it's very centrally located, so you will go there. The square is called Santa Croce, S-A-N-T-A, Saint, and then another word, C-R-O-C-E. Santa Croce is one of the main churches in Florence. It has a really big square in front of it. If you look at the church, you have the door of the church in front of you. On your right-hand side, on the corner, the shop on the corner is called Gold Corner. You can't go wrong. It's a really good retail for jewelry. I think they have really good prices, and they have both gold and silver, rose gold, white gold, red gold. It's a really good place. Fran, do you have an Instagram or Facebook page we can follow? Yes, I think Mara can include it in the email maybe, because then you see it typed. Tammy, in your opinion, what are the differences, similarities in comparing Amalfi Coast and Cinque Terre? That's a really good reason. So for the ones of you who don't know, Cinque Terre is it's 5 hamlets, 5 towns on the coast, on the northwest coast of Italy. So we are on the west coast with the Amalfi Coast, but these Cinque Terre thing is way more to the north of Italy, and it's close to the border with France. And Cinque Terre are another World Heritage Site, and they are very, very famous, very touristic as well. The difference with the Amalfi Coast is that Cinque Terre are not connected. One of the differences, of course, I'm being very superficial here, but they're not connected with a road. They have trains that connect them. So the only way of doing it other than by boat, because they are coastal towns, is with the train. And the Cinque Terre are famous for their terraces. They're natural, well, they're man-made, but the terraces in the mountain, the whole landscape looks like that, and it's been like that for like 7,000 years. The primitive humanoids did it first. It's a way in a very hilly and vertical land to create horizontal spots where to grow your crops. So I would say those are, so the landscape also looks very different. Karen, do you know the name / location of a good Italian language school in southern Italy? Nope. But I know that, especially this year with COVID, online lessons have become even more a thing even more than before. So if you look it up online, I've discovered there are a couple of websites. They don't offer themselves the lessons. They are only acting as a connector between the people who know a language and can teach it and the people who need to learn that language. So if they connect you, and you can Skype, and you can, you know, do it virtually or on Zoom, and you can have conversation lessons. I'm a big believer in the conversation versus grammar. I don't think studying grammar when you're an adult makes any sense. When you want to learn a language, it's so difficult already when you're an adult. You don't care about the rules of the grammar. You care about getting by and being understood and knowing what wine is in Japanese, right? Christelle, best cannoli in Rome. Christelle, I'm gonna see your cannoli, and I'm gonna relaunch with a maritozzo, Maritozzo, maritozzo. So that is what cannoli is for Sicily, maritozzo is to Rome, okay? And the best place for maritozzo, it's a pastry filled with whipped cream. I mean, you're gonna like it if you like cannoli. The best maritozzo in Rome is a place called Mari, M-A-R-I, in the downtown of Rome. So it's a hole in the wall, but it's gorgeous. They make sweet and savory maritozzi. Val Carlone. What do Italians think of the singers Il Volo? Love them. Me personally, I don't know about the rest of the nation, but I like them. I think they are very, very talented. The reference is to a singing group, a singing trio. These are very, very young. I think they are in their late 20s or early 30s singers of opera. So they sing opera, but with a very cool beat as a base. So they put together, you know, the opera and classical singing with a more modern twist. I think they're really, really good. Nancy, can you put together a virtual tour of Tuscany and all the things to do and see? Wines, of course, too. I think we can. I think we can. Pat Herring, Elena, my husband loves you. He has tears in his eyes. Thank you. Stephen, can we have those wonderful Neapolitan lemons shipped overseas? I don't know, Stephen. You might. You really have to dig online and see if there's any place that can ship them. I would just be afraid of the cost, you know, and of how well they travel, even if they're fresh at the origin. I don't know. You have to come visit and you can grab as many as you want. Jamie, thank you for the lovely tour. I sat in my living room across from picture my parents bought while in Pompeii at least 40 years ago. Do many artists sell their works in the area? Jamie, yes, some do still, even though it has become such a touristic spot that the majority of the souvenirs sold there are just, you know, serial objects, industrialized, so not as many artists in the area anymore. So it's lovely that you have that one.
I thought that would be a nice question to end the presentation with, because it was a heartfelt, nice question. So I know with so many people have stayed on for all of this Q&A. I don't even know how many hours we've been online talking about Italy, but it's awesome. Elena, I can't thank you enough. And for the people that come and join us on these, I just can't thank you either enough. I mean, it's been so wonderful to be able to share travel this way. This is definitely the blessing of the curse. I always say with every curse, there's a blessing, and this blessing has been so amazing. I know for me, I get to go on every single one of these tours, so it's been great. Again, I cannot thank you enough, Elena. Everybody out there, please look forward to some more tours. If you want to see more of Italy, we can bring Elena back again. And for everybody who has the rest of their day planned, enjoy it. All good things must come to an end. And so this presentation going to be the same. So I'm going to end the tour for everybody. Have a good time and a good rest of your day.
Thank you. My incredible pleasure. Thank you.